Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome. You're locked on to the NBA free agency special. My name is Nick Angstadt. I'm the host of Locked On Mavericks and Fridays on Locked On NBA. And joining me, oh man, we got the GOAT fantasy basketball podcaster, content creator extraordinaire, Josh Lloyd, also host of Locked On NBA on Mondays. Josh, what you got for me?
Nick, how are you, mate? It's nice and early here, getting ready for some free agency moves, we hope. And I'm strapped in. I'm ready to go.
Let me be the American that asked, what time is it there?
It is exactly 7 a.m.
Whoo! Getting up early.
Right.
Anybody else, let us know in the chat if you're up at 7 a.m. or is anyone up earlier? I'd be curious to know if anyone's up there somewhere. Where would it be earlier than you?
Well, in the west coast of Australia, it's earlier. So if you're over in Perth, it's like 4 a.m. I think, or 5 a.m.
Shout out to anyone in Perth. We already have Court ask, what happened to Josh Lloyd's mustache? You had the greatest mustache during our NBA draft show.
Yeah, my partner's like, okay, you've had it for too long. You look dirty. You look very you look very. How did you get a working with children's check card? You probably need to get rid of that. No, fair enough.
Amazing. All right, on today's show, we are going to go through the rumors that have been happening. All kinds of rumors going on right now. It's a little bit of a calm before the storm right now, though. There's not a ton of stuff going on right now. But, Josh, what's the first thing leaping out at you that you're like, I can't wait to hear about this, or this is a thing I'm really interesting that's kind of developing right now?
Well, at the moment, you're right. There's not a huge amount that is going on. The one that's gaining, I guess, the most traction, we had the Woj, is it a report? Is it not a report? Is it this is what I'm thinking? This is what I'm feeling. These are the vibes of a Kyle Lowry deal.
They're laser focused. They're targeting on. They're the leading candidates. They're
he's feeling it in his, if Kyle Lowry was a Sagittarius, then perhaps he'd be considering Miami. But the one that seems to be going at the moment is Lonzo Ball to Chicago. That's getting probably the most steam. That it appears that if it doesn't happen, that it will be a little bit of an upset if that doesn't get across the line.
Yeah, would that be a DeAndre to the Mavericks level of free agency thing if it doesn't happen at this point? I'm sorry to bring up the PTSD for the Mavericks fans, but if that doesn't happen at this point, it would seem like a colossal collapse in negotiations. Yeah,
it feels that way. It might not be, or maybe it is a DeAndre to Dallas. It's definitely not a Marcus Morris to San Antonio level, one that was actually agreed upon and confirmed. But it does feel like, there's always these moving parts and pieces, and we're hearing Charlotte involved and Devontae Graham involved and Satoransky and a whole bunch of guys, and then the Bulls getting involved in other sign-in trades. There's a lot changing around the periphery, but the one thing that seems constant is that it does see that Lonzo, let's say pretty high chance he's going to end up in Chicago next season, which I don't hate for Chicago. They might have to pay him $20 million. I think he's pretty underrated at the moment, Lonzo Ball.
Yeah, let's get into that one right now. So it seems like there's sort of a 3-team deal. I've seen Jake Fisher report on this and others that there's a 3-team deal of Lonzo Ball going to the Chicago Bulls. You have Devontae Graham going to the Pelicans, and then you have Lauri Markkanen and Josh Hart, I think, going to Charlotte. So why is Lonzo Ball being discredited right now? It almost seems like it doesn't seem like there's a lot of people going after him. And then why would the Pelicans just be wanting to move on from Lonzo Ball for Devontae Graham or something like that? I would think they would rather have Lonzo Ball than Devontae Graham. Apparently, Lonzo is close with Zion, but it's an interesting move.
Yeah, mate, are they scared of paying the money? But Devontae's a free agent. He's probably not going to command $20 million a year, would be my guess. But I don't really understand it either. Lonzo is not flashy. Flashy in terms of he's not going out and scoring 20 points per game. But he's providing good defense. That's true. I'm not sure we need to sign LeVar to a deal, but there hasn't really been any issues to me with LeVar in New Orleans. That hasn't been a problem. I don't know. I feel like he's getting underrated because he's not running a ton of pick and roll, which is true. But the way that he played second half of the season, especially when the ball started going more into Zion's hands, him as that connector point guard rather than the guy who just has to initiate everything, much like what Luka Doncic does. Like, that's not Lonzo's game, but in the role that he was in, I thought he started to play really, really well. So it does surprise me that they'd be looking to move on for a guy that's actually a worse 3-point shooter in Devontae Graham.
You think they're going to try to get younger than Lonzo Ball, 23 years old? I mean, they're going to try to go towards, they have Nickeil Alexander-Walker. They have Kyra Lewis. But they were trying to go after Kyle Lowry. So it's sort of they're trying to go in two different directions almost and see, all right, which direction can we finally go in? And now they're like, all right, well, we'll move on from Lonzo Ball, keep our young guys, get Devontae Graham, who's about the same age as Lonzo, maybe a little older, but it's an interesting decision there for the Pelicans.
Yeah, I don't fully understand the direction there at times. Again, you hear those, that chat of that David Griffin wants to get those younger guys more minutes, and then the next minute it's we want Kyle Lowry to be our starting point guard, who is almost old enough to be their dad. Like, who knows which direction they're going with this team. And it feels like, I don't know how you view this, Nick, but it does feel like that there is some, whether it's real or implied, pressure on the Pelicans organization from the whispers that we continue to hear about Zion Williamson and perhaps not being happy, and his overt overtures to playing in New York and all that sort of stuff that seems to just always be bubbling there, either at the surface or even above the surface in some situations, that there's maybe some pressure. Maybe that's the impetus for targeting someone like a Kyle Lowry.
It seems more so Zion's family, right? It's almost like, okay, well, Lonzo is in New Orleans, so we're going to be worried about his parents, when it's Zion's family that's the one that's kind of, making these waves and coming out with these like, he's unhappy and all that kind of stuff. Zion just seems like he's chill, just hanging out, doing what he's going to do, which makes me always think of the conversation of, we talk a lot about, okay, well, this guy's going to want to go win. This guy's going to want to do this. He's going to want this contract and all this. These guys are like 20, 21 years old. How much time have we all collectively, you've been in this business longer than me, collectively thought about all these things, the rings culture and all that? But these guys are just getting into it. They're just discovering their NBA dream. Like, they have not gone through the whole path of development of thinking through, what would my legacy be? What would, it mean for me to go to a winning team and all that kind of stuff? Like, those guys don't necessarily think about this early. But once you get to the Kyle Lowry, the Chris Paul age, things like that, and even Kevin Durant, when he first left Oklahoma City, you start thinking about those things, but it's just so early in a career for a guy to be going that direction. We just haven't seen it yet.
No, we haven't. Like, probably the closest we've ever had to someone at that age making moves or forcing moves is probably current Dallas Mavericks much maligned big man Kristaps Porzingis, who forced to trade depending on how you believe the reports, or was traded without his consent. Whatever it is, he moved on from the Knicks after or before his rookie extension, or before his restricted free agency, and you don't really see that for guys that were top picks who have actually been successful in the NBA. So he's probably the closest we've had to that, but that was dealing with frustrations with the front office in New York. And I'm not sure that that's necessarily happening here, but you can see the signs or the cracks, I guess, appearing with the Pelicans, and with some of that perhaps pressure that might be being put on the organization, especially after they may have a little bit of PTSD from dealing with the Anthony Davis scenario.
Brian Windhorst just went on ESPN and said, from what I'm told, the Bulls are also interested in DeMar DeRozan, pulling off some kind of Lonzo and DeMar DeRozan move. What would the Bulls look like with, let's see, they would have Lonzo, DeRozan, Zach LaVine, and Vooch still on the roster.
Yeah, and then Patrick Williams is just doing all the defending there, I guess.
He's the only one defending.
Lonzo
will defend too, yeah.
But geez, a LaVine DeRozan 2-3 wing combination is going to be, that's rough defensively. And then when you get through those guys, you've got Vooch on the back line. That is, they're going to be going for like 140, 138 type victories, I'm guessing, if that's the lineup. It's a pretty, LaVine's a good shooter. Vooch is a pretty good shooter. Lonzo is a much better shooter than popular opinion would lead you to believe, but that's still it's a relatively rough lineup that is filled with names. But how maybe it gets you to the play-in? Does it get you to like a 7 seed? I don't know. It doesn't feel particularly earth-shaking to me.
No, it'd just be a weird like island of misfit toys team where you're like, okay, this is like okay, if it's almost like the not Teen Titans, but like what's the Avengers, like, or the Justice League, and then the one below it, like the Kid Avengers or whatever they had. Like, it almost seems like it would be that kind of a team.
The Pet Avengers.
The like Paw Patrol. Is that what you're talking about?
No, Pet Avengers. I think it's a thing. We'll get Alligator Loki in there. Just get all those guys in there together.
There you go. Let's go back a couple of days. I think the Westbrook to the Lakers thing has been kind of a big impacting move for the NBA, because all of a sudden the Lakers were, Josh, how many times were the Lakers mentioned with they're interested in this guy and they're interested in this guy and this team this guy is interested in the Lakers. But what does Westbrook to the Lakers mean for this free agency landscape and then for that team in general for their title hopes?
Well, I am not convinced that there's a big change in their title hopes, because the fit is weird. Like, we know that Westbrook has, to his credit, reduced his usage playing alongside Harden, and when he played alongside Bradley Beal, he did that, but he still demands the ball. He still will take some head-scratchingly horrendous shots. He still will be not doing what he needs to do defensively, and that's going to be a problem. And this team has 4 players on their roster at the moment, so it could end up being...
That's not enough. 4 is not enough?
No, you probably need, unless you're just going to have Chris Kaman lying out horizontal on the bench and then bring him back in like they did back in that day when they had everyone injured and out with foul trouble and they tried to play with 4. But that's
Chris Kaman just lying down, like planking on the bench.
One of the best photos of all time, that is. But unless they really knock it out of the park, because it's going to be a lot of minimum signings, it appears. Now, there is Horton Tucker and Caruso that they're going to have to go, significantly into the luxury tax to bring back, and maybe they do that. There's a report today that they'll match anything on Horton Tucker. I'm not sure that that's 100% true, but that's the report. But then how else do you fill around them? Like, how many of these guys are going to come in, and would DeMar DeRozan take a minimum salary to go play with the Lakers? Like, that's because that's what, DeRozan's interested in the Lakers. Well, there's no money there for him to do that. You can't sign and trade when you have no players to sign and trade either. So, these guys are going to have to take significant discounts. And I don't think, do you think that makes the Lakers favorites?
If they get DeMar DeRozan, I mean,
just getting Westbrook, does that make them
now in general
be that good of a team where very good players who could demand 10, 15, 20 million a year would say, screw it, this Lakers team, we go there, we win a ring, so we're going to sacrifice our money to do that? Would you look at that team and go, well, this is the team now that they've got the pieces that I'll sacrifice because I know that we are going to have a massive, significant chance of winning?
They just still need some shooting to me. Like, they just need it. They need a couple shooters. Can they get shooters at the minimum? Is that something that they could still get? In the chat, let us know what you think about the Lakers' title chances, because you also still have the Brooklyn Nets over on the other side. Like, you're not guaranteed a title if you're the Lakers at this point, because of the Brooklyn Nets staring you on the other side of the bracket. Because that team will probably be back and be healthy and all that. But I think Westbrook makes them a better regular season team for sure. This is what people have been saying, it seems like, since the trade happened. Oh, they'll be a better regular season team, but they'll be probably back to the 1 seed and all that. But Jason Tiff today tweeted out the last 3 postseasons, Russell Westbrook has shot 46.4% true shooting in the last 3 seasons. That is like just absolutely brutal for a star player like that with the volume that he is, compared to some of his peers in the postseason. Kyrie, 55.3%. Steph Curry, 62.3%. Dame Lillard, 59.6%. Like, those are stark numbers. Like, 46 all the way to Kyrie, who's at 55. That is like an insane gap right there. And that's in the playoffs. That's when you need it most. This Lakers team was helping off of Westbrook the last time we saw them play when he was in Houston. Like, it's insane to me to see them make this decision, but it makes them a better regular season team. It takes the ball out of LeBron's hands, and honestly, maybe that's what they need. Maybe they just need LeBron to take, like, should we go through the whole rest thing again? Like, he needs to rest more possessions. He needs to sit out more. He needs to. Westbrook can carry them during that. I mean, I think that is a thing that they're gonna have to be doing now, and maybe it's an admission to LeBron that he just can't do everything now.
Well, he can't do everything, but you also said there that, like, we take the ball out of LeBron's hands and then that makes them a better regular season team. Like, it definitely doesn't in that one respect. Like, if you've got the choice and you're at the end of the game, like, do I want the ball in LeBron's hands or do I want it in Russell Westbrook's hands? And everyone knows what the answer to that is. Now, of course, you got to watch in terms of wearing LeBron down, but again, like you said, I feel like we've been saying that for 6 years. Oh, yeah, LeBron's going to wear down. And it just hasn't happened. Like, I know he got injured this year, but that was not him wearing down. That was his ankle being bent at a 90-degree angle. Like, that was not like he was worn down from doing too many passes and dribbles. Like, that's not what happened. It wasn't his arm didn't fall off because he was handling the ball so much. But yeah, so if you're going to take possessions out of LeBron's hands, while it may preserve him, it actually makes your on-court team worse. True. Because in general, like, you want the ball in LeBron's hands because he is, if not the best decision maker in the NBA, he's got to be right up there. And Russell Westbrook is not that player. I'll ask you this question, Nick. If you were, okay, well, maybe it does help him because it does allow a little bit more rest and you can sit LeBron and Westbrook and run games and they're against different opponents and they don't have to deal with Kawhi for most of this season with the Clippers. They'll be a worse off team and all that stuff's true. But if you're looking towards a squad in the playoffs, you could trade for $44 million worth of Russell Westbrook, or you could go and sign Danny Green to play alongside LeBron and Anthony Davis. We've seen Danny Green on the Lakers before. I know which one I think would be a better fit for that team, and then you could actually get other players in there around it. But like, that's just not the way that the Lakers seem to be building things. To me, Green is, that perfect sort of playoff type piece. Like, maybe it doesn't help you necessarily huge amounts in the regular season, but we saw Danny Green on the Lakers. We saw Danny Green get injured for the Sixers, and then the arse completely fall out of whatever they were doing. That sort of player is, to me, what wins you championships as a third guy, fourth guy, rather than a Russell Westbrook coming in and doing whatever it is that he does.
Yeah, and we've seen now with the Brooklyn Nets, you have to have shooters in those three spots if those are going to be your high volume guys, because they have to be able to move around, they have to be able to space the floor for each other and all that. And then with the Phoenix Suns, the Milwaukee Bucks of the world, you have to have at least like 8 solid players, like solid rotation players, in order to make a title run, I think, unless those top 3 guys are just so good that you can carry some of those other guys. And with the Lakers making this decision for Westbrook, it takes you out of a bunch of those other players that could be in that $10 million range or so that they may not have been able to get otherwise. But so it was definitely a choice here to go top heavy and to go a weird fit top heavy. They are going to be fun to watch though. Are you a LeBron guy that will just watch, like, okay, if Westbrook's going to take this possession away from LeBron, I have to see how he's going to respond because it'll either make you happy or make you sad, right?
Yeah, look, it's going to make you frustrated, I think, a lot of the time, trying to see how some of that stuff goes. So that's the thing with Westbrook, right? Like, he used to be one of my favorite players to watch. Back prime OKC days, the athleticism, the aggression, the speed, all that sort of stuff was awesome. But when you watch him, you get the ball, dribble it, take 3 dribbles, have 2 guys on him, and take a contested pull up 2 with like his heel on the 3-point line. You just go, what are you thinking? And that's the problem. Is it like that is never a good shot, really, for anybody, let alone someone who's one of the worst high volume shooters in NBA history. And that sort of decision making for LeBron, who is all about, for how many times did LeBron get criticized in his career for why aren't you taking the last shot? And he'd be like, no, I'm getting the right shot to the right person in the right position with the right defense on them. And that's what all he's about. And if he's going to see some of that stuff go down from Westbrook, where he's just taking contested pull-up jumpers with 21 seconds left on a shot clock, I don't think he's going to be too happy with that.
Maybe not. I'm not feeling that from LeBron James. Yeah. So with the Lakers, though, does this takes him out of all the DeRozan talk? I mean, the Lowry talks already seems to be done. Chris Paul declined his option, but that doesn't seem like it's a possibility at all. Who's left for the Lakers then for them to go after right now? We've had even Ramona Shelburne say that Caruso might be going somewhere else, that they might not be able to sign him. Schroeder is still a piece that they can sign and trade for a Buddy Hield or somebody like that. Who's left for the Lakers?
The players I think that they need to be looking at is, and these guys are probably going to be even too expensive, but Doug McDermott. Like, that's the guy that can go out there and just bang in 40% of his threes. Dwayne Dedmon to take some load off of Anthony Davis as a minimum salary guy who can also shoot some threes. If you can get Patty Mills on a minimum salary, an excellent player to perform that role. Wayne Ellington, maybe he goes for more than that. Reggie Bullock, maybe he wants to head back to LA after starting with the Clippers. These are the sort of players, sort of guys they need to be filling in around this roster. They're going to be looking at Carl Anthony. Now, is that another one we want where he's just taking a bunch of contested mid-range 2-pointers along with Russell Westbrook?
I'll defend Melo a little bit. We saw him a couple times in the playoffs, like help win quarters or swing quarters for the Blazers. Like he can get hot every once in a while, but the Melo to the Lakers thing always just feels like, okay, is this going to be the same thing that Wade to the Cavs was back in, a couple years ago, right? Is it going to work out? We've always been like, oh, LeBron is friends with this guy and all that. And it just did not work at all for Dwayne Wade in Cleveland.
Yeah, I think Melo's probably, is he playing at a higher level than Wade was at that point? Maybe.
He's definitely a shooter, right? Like you can use a shooter now more than Wade was.
Yeah, that's true. He still probably doesn't take enough of them, but he is a better shooter. But there are names.
Did you just say that Melo doesn't take enough shots? you want Melo to take more
threes? Enough threes in comparison to the twos.
More shots.
But in terms of the other guys that are around for them, like I think you go down to Bryn Forbes. Would JJ Redick take that, or that's too far away from where he wants to live?
Yeah, JJ's going to Brooklyn. Let's be real.
Yeah. You look at like Nemanja Bjelica. Like that's the sort of player that I think Denzel Valentine, like these are the Svi Mihailuk, like they're the sort of guys you get Svi back. These are the sort of guys I think that you need to be getting in, or even the quality of players that you're going to be able to afford at the salaries that you have available. But not to say that they're terrible players, but they could fit exactly what you need alongside those other guys. But yeah, this is something I tell people when I'm talking about fantasy drafts and people doing things like that. Like, it's all well and good to stack up and have 3 really good players. But if one of them goes down for a long period of time and then your 4th player, who is Hull Neto, has to step up to be your 3rd best player, you're in real trouble. And you're putting so much stock into a 36-year-old LeBron, a consistently broken down Anthony Davis, and a 33-year-old Russell Westbrook, who's had quad injuries for about 3 years, not to mention the 5 or 6 knee surgeries. How confident are you that they're going to be healthy all season? Well, you should have zero confidence in that. But how confident are you going to be that you're going to have all 3 perfectly ready to go in the playoffs? And I don't think you can have that confidence.
Ooh. So you're feeling good if you're a Western Conference team that's not the Lakers right now, because it's not like this Lakers team is the evil empire that's going to just.
Yeah, I'm not any more worried than what I would have been with them this season, which they were pretty solid. But again, I wouldn't be saying they're an unbeatable team. To me, like the 3 guys in Brooklyn are streets and streets ahead of those 3 guys with the Lakers. Like, to me, yeah, it's not even remotely close to say that those 2 big threes we're matching up. I don't see that at all.
Well, and they're all almost younger too, right? Except for Anthony Davis. I mean, younger than LeBron, and Westbrook is. Wow.
Like, Westbrook's 33. Like, he's not young.
Yeah. All right, we're looking around, seeing if there's any more rumors going on. We're the Locked On NBA free agency show. Nick Angstadt, Locked On Mavs. Josh Lloyd, the GOAT of Locked On Fantasy Basketball. The GOAT of fantasy basketball, right? Is anybody better than you?
I don't like to toot my own horn, Nick. I don't know.
Almost.
I feel like I provide maybe the most content. I don't know if it's the best, but maybe the most.
Almost got you to do it. All right, there's a lot of Mavs fans in here, so let's transition to Mavs stuff, obviously, because a lot of people are shouting out the Raccoon Squad, shouting out Mavs, shouting out me. I appreciate everybody in the chat. I'll go to you first. What are you thinking about the Dallas Mavericks right now? You think that they've saved up all this money again to just be disappointed by getting no one? Because it seems like that's how Mavs fans just do free agency. You get all your hopes up and you're really excited, and then you just get brought back down to earth when DeAndre Jordan leaves.
Well, I'll say this, like, maybe have that hope from previous years, and you can go and realize some of that hope now, and you can go and sign Dwight Howard or sign DeMarcus Cousins. They're available. So maybe it's just going to be 3 or 4 years delayed to bring that. That can be a big splash. We did. We got DeMarcus Cousins. It happened. We got him. We brought him in, and then you can be happy with that. It doesn't feel like you're going to get Mike Conley or you're going to get Lowry. I think Dragic feels like a pretty big possibility that he will come across in some sort of 3-way trade with Miami and Toronto. And I think that's totally a solid move. There's obviously guard minutes available with Josh Richardson now in Boston. But yeah, I think their priority at this point has to be looking at Tim Hardaway, bringing him back, but also making sure that you don't overpay him, because it was very much like I've had a really strong 2.5 months leading into free agency. So how much do we handicap ourselves for the next 4 years if we overpay there? So there is a risk. I would love them to go after Spencer Dinwiddie. Like, I think that's the guy that they should be targeting. I don't really think that they are, but that should be the guy they're looking at, I think.
Yeah, there's been some talk of Dinwiddie, I think, but DeRozan, Dinwiddie, that's kind of been my big question over the last couple of days is, would you rather have DeMar DeRozan or Spencer Dinwiddie? And at this point, the Mavericks just want a secondary creator, a guy like what the Lakers are trying to do with Westbrook, to try and take up some of these minutes when Luka is not on the floor, because when Luka's not on the floor, especially in the playoffs, they just crater. Like they're down like 42, like minus 42 basically when Luka was not on the floor, I think, in this last playoff run. So we're interested to see if they're able to add, but there is a bunch of those guys available. So maybe they strike out now, it seems, on Kawhi, on Kyle Lowry, on Lonzo going to a different team now in a trade, but Dragic is an option. DeRozan is still an option. Dinwiddie's still an option. Like, to strike out on all those guys seems to be pretty tough at this point if you just miss on all of them.
Yeah, it is tough, and it is, again, it's a consistent thing that seems to have happened over the years and years for Dallas. But again, there are ways to bounce back from that, I think, and just getting the right players at the right price. I think someone who would be excellent for them. I don't think they're going to have a chance of getting him, but Will Barton, I think, would be an excellent fit in Dallas. I don't think they're going to get that. He just appears to be going straight back to Denver, but I think that's the sort of guy they should be looking for. What do you think of a Kelly Oubre in Dallas?
A lot of people brought up Kelly Oubre. I've always been kind of against him because he shot worse than...
He's too sexy for you?
The eyes, man. I just get drawn in. I wouldn't be able to ask him any real questions. The Tsunami Poppy just he gets me, man. I think that, like, the 3-point shooting has been worse than Josh Richardson. So, like, are we just not doing that same thing with a taller Josh Richardson again? That's cuter.
Yeah, he is a bad 3-point shooter. There is absolutely no doubt about that. We've got Mark Stein here talking Dallas, saying that Dallas is expected to reach agreement to re-sign Tim Hardaway and Boban Marjanovic early in the process.
The Boban.
The seventh center that you
I
guys
said
need.
it on the show today. The only player I was really nervous about was Boban, because if Boban leaves, a little piece of me will die.
No, Boban's pretty set. He's pretty happy there. He's but yeah, just another center after bringing in Moses Brown and picking up Willie Cauley-Stein's team option, just so he can be the 7th center and play 3 games for the year.
There have been little rumblings about a signing or like some kind of a trade with Dragic. So I think that this is setting out for, you sign Tim Hardaway, you trade for Dragic, and then you send Dwight Powell and maybe Willie Cauley-Stein or Trey Burke or both, those guys up to Toronto to be able to do that kind of a deal. So you lose a couple centers there. Then all of a sudden Moses Brown maybe gets some time, but I don't think he's playing 30 minutes or so.
No, I would highly doubt that, unless you're looking to tank for a higher draft pick. That wouldn't be the move that you're going for. Just think if there's anything else, any other news here. No, nothing else that's I can see happening. Jalen Brunson's contract is being guaranteed today.
You and I were talking about this before. The teams are a little scared off now from after the Bogdanovich thing last year. So all of a sudden, it's going to come in about 30 minutes or so. We're just going to get flooded with an insane amount of stuff. So stick with us. We will be talking about all the stuff that's kind of happening and the stuff that could happen. And then all of a sudden at the actual deadline, it's going to just explode. Like, I wish I had Rachel Nichols like exploding like cannons in the background, but it's going to feel like that.
Let's hope we have a bunch of stuff going down. We'll have something at 6:01 because we know that NBA agents are the quickest negotiators, and they can write up those contracts very, very quickly. They can get them really in 1 minute. It's all done. But we expect that to happen. Looks like the Bulls contracts for Thad Young and Thomas Satoransky are now fully guaranteed, so they are.
There's a reason for that, right?
Yeah, because they were guys that to get the cap space to sign players, they needed to be waived. So those guys are there. Yeah, whether that's in Alonzo coming in, sign and trade, whether it's a Lowry Markkanen moving out, sign and trade, and DeMar DeRozan coming in, or whatever it is, the Bulls appear like they're up to something.
They're trying to make a move. Maybe it's maybe it's both Lonzo and DeMar DeRozan, which would just make them a bizarro offense-only team at a certain point.
Yes,
absolutely. So the one thing that we kind of feel like is going to be happening is Kyle Lowry to the Miami Heat. DeRozan has been rumored to maybe go with him. It doesn't seem like that's going to be a possibility, but some kind of sign, some kind of trade with Kyle Lowry going to the Miami Heat. Dragic going back up to, and Precious Achiuwa possibly going up to Toronto. What's your thoughts on that for Miami?
For Miami, well, it's an upgrade over Kendrick Nunn, who was starting at point guard for much of the season. Maybe he can still come back. He's an upgrade over Goran Dragic. I don't think, losing Dragic, okay, that's a replacement. Losing Precious Achiuwa, I don't think is any great loss whatsoever. So if that's all it involves to get Kyle Lowry in, it's an improvement for sure. I think it makes them better. Does it make them back to Eastern Conference finalist level team? I'm not sure about that. Again, everyone's a year older, but it gets more important when you're Jimmy Butler and you're 33, 34 at that age and you're a year older.
And you're waking up at 4 a.m. every day with Mark Wahlberg trying to just get in all the work you can.
Honestly, I've so many issues with some of that stuff that he does. Like, it's all well and good. Like, oh, look how hard he grinds. It just means he's going to sleep at like 6 p.m. or something.
Yeah.
Like, and it makes unless he's staying up till the end, unless he's sleeping 4 hours a night, which we all know is actually terrible for your body. And then it makes no sense because then when you get into an NBA season, you can't run on that schedule. So you just got to change your complete sleep cycle over again because you've got to be up until 2 a.m. You're getting home from games and sleeping. So none of that makes any sense. Like, why not just, you're not doing anything else during the day, Jim. Just go at 9 o'clock to the gym. You don't need to go at 3 in the morning. Like, unless you're just doing it to post on the gram. Is he just got scheduling tweets with his photo on there? Like, there's absolutely no need from it apart for him to appear like he's harder working than everybody else with the emoji face and smoke coming out of his nose.
But Kyle Lowry to the Miami Heat, does that put them back in the finals? Does that put them back into Brooklyn Nets and them sort of Eastern Conference showdown?
I think Brooklyn and Milwaukee are still better than Miami. Boston and Philadelphia, who knows what else is going to go on with those guys in terms of moves. We know Boston's already been active, making 3 trades already in this offseason. Maybe it pushes them back into a top 4 spot, but I don't think it makes them even a favorite to be an Eastern Conference finalist.
Which they kind of have to make one of these moves, like you said. They have to try and add some talent. They have to do that if they want to keep Jimmy Butler around, if they want to, keep retooling around him. That just seems like what Pat Riley always does, right? He always just tries to add new talent. I think that does put them in a conversation because we still haven't seen a Ben Simmons trade. They're the other team that's kind of up there. The Milwaukee Bucks, they're still going to be back up where they were. They haven't really made any moves. They probably won't. Bobby Portis, who is our background here, if you're watching this, Bobby Portis celebrating with the trophy, they'll probably be back up there. That's probably your top 4, right? Do you see any other team breaking into that?
What about the team that was in the conference finals this year?
The Hawks?
Yeah. Are they getting worse? I know there was a level of luck to getting there, but you would think that Trae Young gets better. You would think that Bogdan Bogdanovic won't be as injured as he was this season.
Basically, everybody on that team should get better, right? Development-wise.
Yeah. Cam Reddish. They did all this with Bogdanovic being like, his knee wasn't right at the end. Reddish played 2 games in the playoffs. Hunter didn't play with his knee done. John Collins, I wouldn't say he was at his best during the season. He played pretty well in the playoffs, but they're going to have most of these pieces back. They bring in Delon Wright to be some nice bench guard depth and really good defense and help with some of the backup point guard problems. If I had to put money on it now, which I wouldn't because it's way too early, I think there's a massive, massive chance that the Hawks end up better than Miami next season.
Wow.
Miami just has the appeal, the name, the Heat culture, all that sort of bullshit there. But there's still a lot that they need to work out as well. Is Duncan Robinson coming back? I assume so, but maybe not. We don't know what's going to happen there. Who is playing the 4 for them? Because it was Trevor Ariza at the end of last season. Okay, and part of their success 2 years ago in the bubble was having Jay Crowder, small ball shooting 4. They traded away Kelly Olynyk, who can fill that role. Trevor Ariza, I don't think really is going to be the guy to do it. Who's filling that space next to Bam Adebayo? Do you just bite the bullet and play Jimmy Butler full time as a 4? He's almost getting to that level now in terms of his lack of shooting, but you still need a spacer out there. I don't know. I just think that they get a little bit overrated because of the Miami mystique, because of Pat Riley, because of that finals run 2 years ago. And while I think they're good and they're a playoff team, I wouldn't say that they are. Lowry improves them. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But much like the Lakers, their team is still very much in flux.
So you're not a believer in the Heat culture. Seth Malone in our chat saying that the Miami Heat culture is a joke. He's just completely out on it.
I think it is completely overrated because, if you're Heat culture and then you're signing Dion Waiters and giving big money to Hassan Whiteside, did it change those guys' outlook on life and the way they played and conducted themselves? No, they just thought they were good players and they gave them money. It's just one of those myths or narratives that gets, I don't know, self-fulfilling prophecies. Is that what it is? You just say it enough times that people believe it. Like how often does it actually, okay, James Johnson came in and was fat and then got into shape and played well, and that's true, but it's not just a cure-all for anyone's ills that you can just throw anyone in there and they become good. It's just not how it works.
So I kind of do believe in the Heat culture in the sense that it takes the non-NBA player to make them an NBA player, right? Like it takes your, Josh Richardson was a second-round pick and not really in the league till all the way up to, a certain level. It takes your James Johnsons, who wasn't necessarily, going to be sticking around that much longer, and gives him more life at the end of his career. Like it takes him to that point, but it's not going to take your good role player to like star level necessarily. I mean, I guess maybe it worked with Tyler Hero, but yeah, I think it works on that level.
Has Tyler Hero gone to star level? I feel he's gone backwards this year, and maybe the Heat culture, maybe that the Heat culture is they want to get rid of him. According to some of his off-court extracurricular activities that maybe aren't pleasing the higher ups in Miami. But I agree, the development's been excellent in terms of getting undrafted guys and lowly second-round picks, Duncan Robinson, Kendrick Nunn, Josh Richardson, and developing players like Bam Adebayo. It doesn't work for everybody though. It's not like it's not just a blanket statement that whoever they get, Precious Achiuwa, Heat culture, it's going to really fit. He was terrible last season. He wasn't very good, and that doesn't mean that's always going to be the way that it works for these players. And again, it's marketing. So much is marketing in terms of attracting free agents and getting buzz and publicity. And Pat Riley's a master at it. And you have to give him full credit, even if it is something that is maybe a little bit overblown.
You're saying Precious Achiuwa didn't run enough sand dunes? Is that what you're saying? He didn't
get up early enough. He just wasn't up at 3 a.m. He valued his sleep too much, and he didn't buy enough $20 coffees from Jimmy Butler, perhaps.
Yeah. What else are we seeing right now? Any rumors coming around? It seems like everybody's just kind of being quiet now at this point. There's a report right now from Shams Charania that John Collins and the Hawks are not close to a contract as free agency opens, which is kind of different than what we've been hearing over the last couple of days, that it just seemed like John Collins was going back to the Hawks. So you think that the Hawks are better than Miami, or they might be better than Miami? Does this change anything if they can't agree to a deal?
Yeah, if they can't agree to a deal, it does make it makes them worse. There's no doubt about that, but they can also just match the contract and bring him back. That might piss him off, but they can also just do that. So I'm not really worried about him going anywhere else. And if he's so adamant about not playing there because of disrespect in the contract process or whatever, they can get a pretty big deal back, because they can always just hold that over his head or the other team's head and go, we'll just match it and bring you back then. So give us a lot. Give us what we want. Otherwise, you're coming back here, and maybe we'll work out a deal to trade you later on. I just don't see, given the way that they have built their team, given the way that they didn't give him the contract he was after in the offseason, I don't think they're just going to allow him to walk for nothing when they've got match rights, especially when they are a team that is, that does have high aspirations, and I think rightfully so.
Giving a player like John Collins such a big deal is so weird for me, because he doesn't get his own shot. He doesn't necessarily defend his position at a high level. And so if you don't do that, and you're not creating your own shot, you're not defending that well, but you can, he is a good pick and roll guy. He is a decent pick and pop guy. He can stretch the floor. He does some things, but to give a guy that much money when there are guys this is a weird comparison. You just mentioned Jay Crowder for the Heat made a big difference for them, but that's the sort of guy that you want in that spot that doesn't make $25-30 million. Just seems like you're giving too much money to a guy that you can get those kind of skills for, that skill set from different players. It's just a really weird thing. I'm not saying John Collins isn't worth that money, but in today's NBA, it's almost like, why would you pay that guy so much money for something that is not as valuable in the NBA right now?
I'm a little bit higher on John Collins than you are. I think he can do a little bit more defensively. I think he can protect the rim a little bit. He's obviously got extreme athleticism as a rebounder, offensively and defensively. I think you're right. He can't necessarily create his own shot, but he still finds a way to get 18, 19, 20 points per game without being able to do that. And it is really valuable. And again, you got to look at the Hawks situation, is that if they don't want to pay him that money, then what else? They don't have the money to replace him. They can't go out and get another player worth $20 million unless it is in some sort of sign and trade deal. They can't just say, well, if he goes, we have the cap space and we can just go bring in someone else at that quality of player. So while it might be an overpay, and $25 million a year it probably will be an overpay for John Collins. They can't just go out there and then bring in someone on an equivalent salary through free agency, unless they go back to the well and bring back bit parts of like Paul Millsap and things like that. Like, it's just not going to cut it. They rely on Danilo Gallinari to be a full-time starting power forward. Like, I don't think they're going to do that either. Do they trust that DeAndre Hunter and Cam Reddish can just start and play 35 minutes a night at the 3 and 4? I think they trust that Hunter can do that, but do they trust Reddish in doing that? I just don't think that you can really afford to let him go, even if that is like a $3, $4, $5 million overpay.
It's interesting. Speaking of interesting, we have a team that is maybe a player in free agency. Everybody's been saying that they have deals to be done still. Wes Goldberg, Locked On Warriors, Locked On NBA. Wes, what's the latest from the Warriors right now?
The latest has everything to do with the Steph Curry extension, right? We've already got that Mark Stein report that Steph will sign the 4-year maximum extension, and I've got no indication that that's not going to be true. The interesting thing to me here is not that he's signing the extension. I think we all expected that. It's if he signs this thing early, I think that is an indicator of stability on the Warriors' part, right? Because this is an organization that has the reputation of being a championship type of culture, but has missed the playoffs for 2 straight years, right? And they missed out on some key veteran type of free agents last summer. They don't want to do that again this summer. So getting the Steph Curry extension inked early is a sign of stability. It shows confidence on the Warriors' part, confidence on Steph Curry's part in the Warriors, and then maybe after that, other free agents that they're going to be targeting look at the Warriors and say, you know what, if Steph's going to sign there for the long term, maybe that's something I want to do too.
Wes, do you feel like some people have said, they got Kuminga, they have Wiseman, they have now Moses Moody. Do you think they're setting up for another deal for somebody? That the Bradley Beal thing was the only one really talked about during the draft, but are they setting up for another move, or are they just like, all right, we're going to try to go in 2 directions. We're going to try to be, have that stability with Steph Curry, like you said, and Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, and then also have this young core that'll be coming off the bench or maybe spot starters in different places to try to stay young at the same time.
There's definitely let's have our cake and eat it too type of thing happening in Golden State, and I've argued against that route in the past. They don't care. They don't listen to me. I guess they
argued that the Warriors should do that, or that they are trying to do that.
I've argued that they should not do that, but they are very clearly doing that. I mean, drafting Jonathan Kuminga at 7 is all the proof that you need. That guy's really raw, and I think there's an expectation even from the Warriors' part that he's not going to play a meaningful role anytime soon. So they are trying to kind of do both, right? Thread the needle is the term that they like to use all the time. But that puts the onus on Bob Myers and what it is that they do in free agency. Makes it even more important, right? And so Andre Iguodala is a guy that they would like to have back. He is not the Andre Iguodala that, helped them at the height of that dynasty years, right? I mean, he was kind of on and off the last couple of years in Miami. I think he wouldn't be quite like the Udonis Haslem of that team. He would still play minutes, right? But I don't think you could expect him to contribute in that same way right away. So they need to go out and get somebody else. The interesting thing with Iguodala is now you're hearing reports that the Lakers could be interested. This is classic Andre Iguodala, guys. Like it was only a few years ago that he played the Sacramento Kings off of the Warriors in order to get a good contract. This is what he's doing. If you think that you're getting him for the minimum, I think he's trying to play the Lakers and the Warriors off of each other. It's just my read of the situation to maybe get a portion of that mid-level exception, something more than the veteran minimum. And if that's the case, look, I think the Warriors, if it was for the minimum, they'd be like, yeah, sign him up. Wouldn't even blink. Let's go. But for a portion of that mid-level, something that they're trying to do more with, maybe go get a Nick Batum type or a point guard like Patty Mills or something like that who can help run that second unit, they would have to at least think about it more than if it was just the minimum. So Iguodala is the big name, and there's obviously some other targets that they're going to try to get.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Nick.
So what are the other targets you think that the Golden State is looking for? How do they fill out the rest of this roster? What are their options? What are their moves? Who are the players to watch today?
Well, I don't know about today because I don't know how soon it seems like the big point guards are going to go quickly, right? Kyle Lowry, Chris Paul, We'll see what happens with Dennis Schroeder. Who knows? But the Warriors aren't in play for him, I don't think, unless they can maneuver some sort of sign and trade involving Kelly Oubre. But I don't expect the Warriors and the Lakers to help each other out in this situation. I think you're looking at that next notch. They have the $5.9 million mid-level exception. I think you're looking at guys like Corey Joseph, Patty Mills, maybe even a Derrick Rose, even though it sounds like there might be some interest between him and Chicago, and certainly I guess the Knicks could be a possibility there too. That's kind of what they need. In the draft, they prioritized wings, and they did that for a reason, right? They knew that Kelly Oubre is probably leaving. They knew that Kent Bazemore, who was a helpful player for them last year, was a starter for them at the end of the year. He's probably gone because he's looking for a long-term deal that the Warriors can't really give him. So they went and prioritized wings in the draft, but that means that they have a big need for a backup point guard right now. I think that's going to be what they allocate the mid-level exception for, if they can get the guy that makes sense. And then I think obviously you're looking at a guy like Iguodala at the wing. If not him, if he ends up signing with the Lakers, for example, maybe you look in the direction of a Trevor Ariza or something like that. And then I think they're also looking for a big man. We've already heard reports that Paul Millsap could be interested. We'll see. I think that might be a mid-level exception type of guy, but I could see them adding a third big on the minimum, like a guy that's not going to excite Warriors fans, but a Bismack Biyombo type, a Mike Muscala type, somebody like an Alex Len, like somebody like that who's just another name to have. Those are really the three major needs. Veteran point guard being at the top of the list, a veteran wing, and then just a third big man so that you can add to that depth.
Where's any word on someone, say like a Nick Batum, who obviously played a pretty large role for the Clippers last season? You talk about guys that can move the ball and can defend wings. To me, he'd be a pretty interesting option for the Warriors there, whether that is starting or coming off the bench. I think he'd be someone that could fill in that Bazemore role at probably a higher level and do the sort of things that he did in LA. Has he been linked at all to the Warriors?
There is mutual interest between Batum and the Warriors. There was last year too. There was two guys that the Warriors had targeted last year before Klay Thompson tore his Achilles. It was Nick Batum and Marc Gasol, right? And they thought they had the inside track on both of them. Klay tears his Achilles the night of the draft, and Batum goes to the Clippers, and Gasol goes to the Lakers. Now, if you ask the Warriors, they think that, hey, we were going to get these guys if not for Klay getting hurt. Well, I don't know if that was actually the case or not, if they were just really optimistic or confident. But Batum had a really nice year for the Clippers. I know that there's been some skepticism about whether or not he would return to the Clippers with Kawhi being injured and obviously having opted out. But if Kawhi re-signs, it wouldn't shock me if Batum came back, right? Like whether or not they're a championship team or not, like that's the place where he resuscitated his career, and he has obviously some success there. So he might want to get back there. And after such a good year, and given the lack of quality wings on the open market, is the $5.9 million mid-level exception enough for Nick Batum? Like, I don't know. He would have to maybe take a discount in order to play for Golden State. I don't know what kind of appetite there is. Is there mutual interest? I'm sure there is, but I don't know what kind of appetite there is to take a discount if some other more lucrative offers come his way.
Last question for you here. What's the thought among Warriors fans, yourself, that are the Golden State Warriors a finals contender next year? Where do you see them in the hierarchy, after this weird Westbrook move and some of the other moves that are going to happen in the West today?
Yeah. I'm going to give you a really great non-answer, Nick. It really just depends on how these next days sort out. Like, based on the draft, look, I thought that there were certain moves that they could have made in the draft that could have, I don't know that elevated them to the favorites in the West, but certainly would have put them in a better position now, right? They took the long play in drafting Kuminga at 7. I think there were other guys at the board that would have been more immediately impactful. I thought Moody at 14 was a nice pickup, but I don't think you can really expect that much of him as a rookie right away. It depends on how this goes, right? If they're really, really keen on adding Iguodala with a big portion of that mid-level exception, I don't know that gets them there, right? I think they have to make a bigger, more impactful addition there with that mid-level exception. That's really what we're looking at, guys. Is that MLE? Can you get a 6-man type of guy with that? If not, you're really, really hoping for a big jump from guys like Jordan Poole, maybe a sooner than expected impact from guys like Moody and Kuminga, a huge leap from James Wiseman, who's still dealing with the MCL tear. I just don't know that they've got the guys. So it really depends on how free agency shakes out and if they can get some bargain bin type of deals.
Wes Goldberg, Locked On Warriors. Great stuff over there, as well as Tuesdays on Locked On NBA.
You nailed it. We'll be there tomorrow.
Go check. I should know that by now. It's kind of my job to know that. But there you go, Wes Goldberg. Go follow him on Twitter. Great stuff from him. And now we are going to bring in the host of Locked On Bulls. It is Matt Peck. Matt, your team's doing some stuff. What's the latest from Chicago?
Gentlemen, what's going on? Isn't this weird? The Bulls get themselves a new front office, and we're actually involved in conversations just mere minutes before free agency starts. This is a new feeling for us. I don't really know what to do right now. I'm not sure what to do with my hands.
Vooch and now possibly Lonzo and possibly DeRozan as well. What do you make of the Lonzo DeRozan trade rumors now?
It's crazy, man. So we just saw for Bobby Marks just a few minutes ago that the Bulls did officially guarantee the third year on the contracts of both Thad Young and Tomas Satoransky, both veterans who have been reported to have interest from a lot of different teams around the league. And that certainly would signal that the Bulls front office of AK and Eversley are freeing up the opportunity to use that trade salary to not only potentially do this Lonzo deal with the Pelicans and maybe the 3-team trade with Charlotte, but somehow also, according to Windhorst just earlier this afternoon, also going after DeRozan in a sign-and trade, because we've heard for weeks that the Spurs have interest in the Bulls' restricted free agent Lowry Markkanen, who, by the way, I'm wearing a Markkanen jersey for maybe the last time tonight. Because
you do not have a Markkanen. Turn around. There's no way that's a Markkanen.
Oh, wow. It is.
That is a long-suffering Bulls fan, Matt Peck, with a Lowry Markkanen jersey. What was the thought on buying that?
Dude, I fell in love with that guy his rookie year. I was all in on Lowry Markkanen, man. He was, first team all rookie, had an amazing coming out party game at the Garden where he looked better than Kristaps Porzingis. There was, some ups and downs his sophomore season. I fell in love with him his rookie year, and it's going to break my heart to see him go. But hey, I've got my Patrick Williams jersey waiting in the wings as soon as Lowry is officially no longer a Bull. So.
There's also still 31 minutes left for a Cristiano Felicio extension. Are you feeling good about that one?
Wherever Gar Forman is, I hope he's pouring one out for his pal Felicio right now.
So Lonzo Ball, that one seems to have a little bit more traction than the DeRozan one. What do you take about the fit with Lonzo, Zach LaVine, and then Kobe White seems to be the point guard that's kind of like being pushed into a bench role, judging by the different the moves and rumors that the Bulls are trying to make.
Yeah, the Bulls were in the market for a point guard this offseason, even before Kobe White unfortunately suffered an offseason injury, a significant shoulder injury. He's going to be on the shelf for at least probably the first month of the regular season when games start. He's going to miss all of training camp. I think that propelled the Bulls front office to, look for that correct guy at point guard even further, because Kobe flashed some good and some struggles his first 2 years, both starting and playing a bench role. But as far as Lonzo and his fit, what Kobe lacked playing alongside Zach LaVine was length, perimeter defense, rebounding ability, and some playmaking that necessarily wasn't what Kobe's greatest strength was. So that, combined with the fact that Lonzo, to his credit, really has become at least a semi-viable threat behind the three-point line, Lonzo paired with Zach LaVine actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I agree with that, Matt. I think that having Lonzo there is an upgrade over Kobe, and Kobe's possibly not going to be ready to start the season anyway. And I think it gets him to move into that role, which is going to be what his NBA calling card is, probably as that guy that can start but can play off the bench, be a third guard, be a scoring microwave player who comes in with a high usage and does his thing in 25, 26 minutes rather than being tasked with running an entire offense. To me, that's a pretty smart move to recognize where the players are and what your team needs. But it also, I won't say it's and I'm sure you wouldn't say this either, that it's beneficial that Kobe White was injured, but it maybe just helps speed that process up a little. Well, he's not going to be there to start the season, so we do need someone else in there. And it could end up being the better thing for Kobe and for the Bulls in general.
Yeah, not to say that the Bulls are giving up on Kobe. I think that the new front office really liked what they saw from him, and our new coach, Billy Donovan, put a lot of trust on his shoulders as a second-year player to come in and say, you're our starting point guard now, even knowing that Kobe was more comfortable being an off-ball threat. So I still think that if Kobe comes back healthy and gets 2/3 of a season, half a season, he can still build on his game. But in the meantime, you need a better option than Tomas Satoransky or, our second-round flyer from last Thursday night, Ayo Dosunmu, the product from U of I, a Chicago kid. He did some ball handling and some point guard play at U of I, but you're not throwing a second-round pick in there to start, alongside Zach LaVine in the backcourt right away. So you need to do something. Right now, it looks like Lonzo's the most likely option. The other name that has been floating around a lot is a potential return from one Derrick Rose, but it sounds like it's going to be hard pressed to pry him away from Tom Thibodeau's fingers over there in New York.
Kind of a favorite there. Well, the other name has been DeMar DeRozan, kind of signaled as a guy that they could maybe squeeze in with some kind of other move. I think that one was more of the Lauri Markkanen move. What's your take on DeMar DeRozan being a possible addition, and Alonzo, DeRozan, Zach LaVine, Vooch, lineup with Patrick Williams thrown in there somewhere?
Yeah, my first thought is, did Jerry Reinsdorf sell the Bulls to somebody who actually doesn't mind spending a lot of money? Because, if you're trying to have a roster of Vooch is under contract for 2 more years, getting north of $20 million, you got Zach LaVine's extension and probably max looming. Not likely. I don't see that getting done, this offseason. I think he's going to wait and hit unrestricted free agency next year. We'll see if the Bulls can convince him to stay. But adding DeRozan to that, and you're going to pay Lonzo over $20 million, that's a lot of money to go around. As far as the fit, look, I still think that DeRozan is a heck of a player, and he could slide in and sort of play the wing position because the Bulls' rook, Patrick Williams, played a lot of 3 last year because the Bulls were still trying to find out, is Lowry Markkanen a part of our future? They had Thad Young. They brought in Daniel Theis at the trade deadline from Boston. So P-Dub played a lot of the wing, but I think looking forward, he could more naturally and really excel playing the power forward position, especially in today's smaller ball kind of lineup. So DeRozan and Patrick Williams at the 3 and the 4 seems like a viable fit. I'm just not sure about the cost for DeRozan and what he gives you on the offensive end. We saw the great mid-range is back in these playoffs, right? With Booker and CP3 and some of those guys. But DeRozan's never really been a great defensive player, in my opinion. And you already have a scorer similar to DeRozan's game in Zach, who you're giving up a lot on the defensive end because of his scoring. I don't know if AK and Eversley want another one-way player like that in DeMar, especially at that price tag.
Josh, what's your thought on a fit like that, or a DeRozan pairing with this lineup in Chicago?
Yeah, Matt, I think you're being a little bit too kind in DeRozan in terms of saying he's not a great defensive player. He's actually pretty bad. Let's be honest. And if he is out there, you have to scheme those other guys to deal with his deficiencies, and that's what San Antonio has been dealing with the last 2-3 years. And putting him and LaVine on the wing, and then the second level behind them is Nikola Vucevic. It's not ideal in that end, and that's tasking a lot for Patrick Williams and Lonzo Ball, assuming that's how things come together, to try and clean up all those messes. And I'm just not sure if what DeRozan takes away on that end, and takes away in terms of spacing, and takes away in terms of the amount of possessions that he needs, is actually a net benefit when there are other players I think that could fit in. And you're right, Williams can easily play up at the 4. I think that's his better position, but I reckon you can find other guys to play at the 3 there that might actually be less of a big name, but fit a little bit better with Chicago.
Yeah, and that's kind of assuming the Bulls do figure out the point guard spot, and Lonzo Ball is a Bull.
I'm in on that. I'm in on
a matter of minutes. The other position,
that's a breaking t-shirt in 5 minutes, right?
Really, dude. Oh, and I didn't come up with that. Lonzo Ball is a thing that's been going around Bulls Twitter for months now. Honestly, for years, Bulls fans have always been going after Lonzo. As far as what the Bulls have to work with, coming into this offseason, they made the trade with Washington at the deadline. In addition to that Vooch trade, they do have Troy Brown Jr., who I think is a quality player, certainly above average on the defensive end, and maybe has some untapped offensive potential. Unfortunately, went down just a handful of games after arriving from that trade with an ankle injury that kept him out for the rest of the season. So Bulls don't really know quite what they have with him, but that's pretty much it when it comes to the wing position and what the Bulls have to work with. You can pretty much guarantee they're saying bye-bye to Denzel Valentine. Thank God, it's about time. They need some answer at the wing other than, we hope Troy Brown Jr. is healthy and good, and maybe Pat Williams plays the 3 a little bit too. Because other than that, the Bulls have no viable answers at that wing spot right now.
Matt Peck, Locked On Bulls. Great stuff over there with Big Dave. Loving the show. Also on YouTube. Go subscribe to them there. Matt, what are you feeling good about today, or are you a little nervous?
I've been able to keep my stress eating, to a minimum so far. honestly, I'm just happy that it's minutes from free agency, and I'm talking on the show because the Bulls might actually be a team that's relevant and trying to do things. So that is a change from the norm, but certainly one I enjoy. Nick, Josh, always a pleasure. You guys have fun tonight. Keep up the great work as always.
Matt Peck, just happy to be here. Go subscribe to Locked On Bulls. Let's bring in now the host of the Locked On Heat podcast, David Ramil. David Ramil sipping the tea, ready for the tampering to begin.
Absolutely. That's the only way to do it here in Miami.
No wonder everyone wants to come to Miami. They just get to just sit with you, Dave, and drink beers.
It's almost as fun as hanging out with Pat Riley.
Give me your initial thoughts on the Kyle Lowry move. That seems to, it's been a done deal for what, like 36, 24 hours now at this point?
Yeah. Well, it's been in the works for a few months, actually. If you think back to what happened during the trade deadline when they were trying to acquire him and they fell just short because Toronto was playing hardball for whatever reason. And I guess eventually it just shook out once, Miami was swept out of the playoffs. They realized they needed to make a change. And so they did. Apparently they're bringing in Kyle Lowry. And I think it's a great move, to be honest with you. Miami's had some real issues defensively. I think everybody's pretty aware of those. I think Lowry, even though he's 35, he can still contribute at a pretty high level.
We had a conversation earlier about Heat culture. Both of us are a little bit bullish on the fact that Heat culture really does take a team, from, where they are to like a complete next level. But pitch us on Heat culture. What's your take on that? And like, we're going to bring this guy in. And here we go. Lonzo Ball has agreed to a 4-year, $85 million deal with the Chicago Bulls. So they're signing him to an offer sheet, it seems, at this point. So deals are happening. It is now 5 o'clock. Maybe we won't get into that conversation about Heat culture. But, give me your take on, Lowry, Heat culture, and what does that all mean?
It's all about accountability and just stability. I think, you talk to players who come in there and just join the team, and the first thing they mention is, well, we already see that there are people here in the front office that have been here for decades. And that's, ever since Pat Riley joined the team in 1995. And there's a stability that's just been a hallmark of this team ever since. And then as far as the accountability is concerned, they expect you to work hard. They have those kind of, checks and balances in place, like the bat tests and everything else like that, so that you're doing the work. And a guy like Jimmy Butler, who we know and is very fond of telling us how much he likes to work, is going to hold everybody accountable. And so I think that's a huge thing, is that when guys come in there, they know they're going to be able to take their games to a whole other level.
So we have now Lonzo Ball agreeing to a deal with the Bulls, which is an interesting one. We have also Will Barton finalizing a deal, 2 years, $32 million to return to the Nuggets. We have, there's another one.
There's Vincent Goodwill's reporting Kyle Lowry is expected to sign a 3-year deal with that sign and trade. So just basically what we heard yesterday.
What's your thoughts on the 3-year deal for Kyle Lowry? He's 35 years old. He's from Mavs. What Mavs fans told me that they didn't want Kyle Lowry is because he is fat and old. Basically, is what they told me. What's your take on Lowry?
Well, he won't be fat in Miami. That's for sure.
He's gonna be running those sand dunes and getting up at 3 a.m.
Well, I think it's going to be great. I'm a little concerned about the amount of money in the third year. I'm not sure if there's going to be a team option or anything like that. I'm sure they'll try to work something in there where they can restructure a deal later on. But at this point, I think it's all about bringing in the guys that want to be there. With the rumors that they want to add DeMar DeRozan and other guys like that fit the culture, the mindset. Last year, it was they were kind of stuck in the middle between what happened in the bubble and then trying to recreate that and falling very short, and then having that open cap space to add a Giannis or somebody like that. Of course, obviously that didn't work out. And then you get, you have like this place now where you have to figure out whether or not you're a contender or whether or not you're a team that gets swept out of the first round. And then a guy like Lowry, I think, raises their ceiling pretty considerably.
We have a couple other deals going on. We have Mike Conley, 3-year, $68 million deal going back to the Utah Jazz. Boban coming back to the Dallas Mavericks. Finally, that is the only thing I was really nervous about. And, of course, Tim Hardaway Jr., 4-year, $72 million deal. Got him away from the Heat. The Mavericks finally got somebody to go there instead of Miami.
Well, I'm not sure how much he would have fit there, but he's probably a better fit than DeMar DeRozan, I guess.
The DeMar DeRozan story was really, really weird. That would have been a weird fit with Miami.
Well, it's still a possibility, isn't it? Or have I heard otherwise? I'm not sure if that's been reported, but I think, obviously being able to reconnect with Kyle, he's got a friendship with Jimmy. I think it would have worked, to be honest with you. I'm not sure what the fit would have been like, but again, as a guy who wants to be in Miami, I think that means a lot because now you can kind of just focus on doing the work, on trying to get better, and maybe you can catch a break in the playoffs. It's all about that. Obviously, they're not going to ever be able to equate the level of talent that Brooklyn has, but if you can get guys on the same page and maybe find a way to catch a few breaks here and there, maybe you'll get lucky.
Who are the other guys now around that core of Kyle Lowry, Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo? I mean, who else is going to be? Is Duncan Robinson coming back? Kendrick Nunn coming back? Those guys are both restricted free agents, I think, at this point. Who else is going to be around that core of those three?
The priority is Duncan. Obviously, just offensively, he adds so much to the team. He makes everybody's job easier. If you're looking at Lowry as a guy who can help things for Bam and kind of free up space a little bit, Duncan's certainly a guy who does that as well with his three-point shooting. None, I think, a little bit easier to reproduce or duplicate, so I think they're not as concerned about bringing him back. And then maybe getting some other veterans. Dwayne Dedmon's a guy that they really liked from last year. I think they might try to add a guy like J.J. Redick just because of his connection to Jimmy Butler from Philadelphia, his connection with Duncan Robinson. He always speaks very highly of Heat culture, so I don't know if they can pry him away from Dallas. So I'm not sure if that's a priority for the Mavs.
What are they losing in Goran Dragic? And he may be a Maverick. It seems like he's going to be a Raptor first. What are your thoughts on Dragic on a different team now? What should they be expecting?
It's hard to say. Last year was really tough, not only because of the challenges of COVID and everything, but the fact that he was bouncing back from injury. It was just so hard to predict what version of Goran you were going to get. You had a night where he could score 25 points, and then he might go, 3 of 15 the following day. And it was tough to kind of expect something consistent out of him. And I think maybe that might be par for the course at 35. So he's always going to try hard. He's a hard worker, obviously. He still has that three-point shot. He's become more reliant on that as his offense continues to, not expand necessarily, but he can't get to the rim as easily. So now he just has to be able to shoot the ball pretty consistently from three-point range, and that's not necessarily a strong suit of his. But look, he's a great locker room guy. If he can go to Dallas, his connection with Luka, I think, is going to be obviously a strong one, and I think he can contribute to that team and bring something else out. But then again, I made the same prediction for Josh Hurtson, and that didn't work out so well either.
Any other things you're watching out for the Heat before we let you go?
Not really. I'm just how they fill out the rest of that roster. I mean, I think it's been pretty exciting to see that they could get in on Lowry. That was their target all along, and the fact that they've been, able to pull it off, just speaks volumes about that front office and everything they've been able to do over the last couple of years.
David Ramil locked on. Let's see. We have Jimmy Butler agreeing to a maximum contract extension with the Miami Heat when the year opens on August 6th. How are you feeling about a Jimmy Butler extension now that we just got that from Shams Charania?
No surprises there. I mean, they have to pay Jimmy. He chose to come to the team a couple of years ago. He's already taken him to the finals. He's symbolic of Heat culture and everything else. And now he's their best recruit. He's their best recruiting guy too. So I think that the fact that he was able to bring Kyle, a close friend of his, into the lineup, I think it's clear they don't want to duplicate the same mistakes that they did with Dwayne Wade a few years ago.
David Ramil, Locked On Heat. I almost said Locked On Mavs. Locked On Heat, doing some great stuff over there. Locked On NBA on Tuesdays. Thanks so much for joining us, David.
You got it.
Oh,
Nick.
Man, the rumors are flying. Josh, what have we got? What's the latest?
All right, so the Butler contract is 4 years, $184 million. It's a lot because Jimmy is not particularly young. That is going to be rough at the end of it. I understand why you have to do it, but that is going. How old is Jim now? He's 32.
46 a year, so that's raise. He's going to get $50 million at the end of that deal with the raise.
Yeah, and he's going to be 36 at the end of that deal. Ooh, okay,
Ooh,
that's rough. Now, now you're a Mavs person, very obviously. What do you feel about Tim Hardaway getting more than Mike Conley?
Tim Hardaway getting that deal, I think it's sort of the Mavericks had the room. The Mavericks had the room to be able to bring him back. They needed him. They were sort of in a spot where if they're not going to get one of these other guys, and they sort of had to. And I think you pay for shooting in this league. I think that's sort of what you do. Mike Conley going to the Jazz seems like a little bit of a discount. Could he have gotten more than that in the open market? So is it?
Oh, we got news here on what the Lonzo thing is. It's Satoransky, Garrett Temple, and a second-round pick for Lonzo Ball.
There we go. So it's not going to be a 3-team deal like we thought. It doesn't seem like the Charlotte Hornets unless that becomes something bigger than this. But yeah, Satoransky, Garrett Temple, and a second round for Lonzo Ball, who's signing that now, $21 million per year contract in Chicago. So that does seem like it's actually going to happen.
Yeah, that's what Shams is reporting now. So that is Woj still asleep at the moment? I don't know what he's.
We have not heard from Woj yet, right? Have we?
All he did was confirm the Lonzo Ball contract, and is his phone done? Like, what's going on? Woj, he's having maybe he's having a break.
I was with Woj at Summer League one time after he talked to like some class I was taking. And he had 2 phones he was working, and he was trying to work out some kind of deal. Watching Woj do a Woj bomb in real life is an incredible experience.
It's so good. It's so funny to watch him, and you just see him sneak off to the corner on the phone. It's the funniest thing. It's so good.
He looks like he's on. It almost looks like he's like off in the corner, like talking to his wife when they're about to like have a divorce, almost, because it's just so intense. And he's like awkwardly in another part of a room somewhere, and you're like, what is going on over there? But yeah, this seems like a steal for Chicago to me.
Yeah, look, but again, I guess New Orleans doesn't want to pay Lonzo that much. They could have just let him go for nothing. Satoransky is a very, very good backup point guard and a very solid starting point guard if they want to go that way. Garrett Temple is a very good wing defender. They were using Najee Marshall in that role, and Garrett Temple is a lot better than that. So you're getting back 2 pieces which they're not blockbuster names. They're nothing huge, but they are really, really key and really valuable rotation players. And you're getting that back rather than, and they obviously didn't want to pay Lonzo $21 million a year. It's not bad. Like, it seems cheap on the surface, but remember, sometimes sign and trades, you get nothing back, and it's just more to facilitate getting a draft pick or to help with trade exceptions or whatever it is. But they are useful rotation pieces.
Yeah, Lonzo Ball, $20 million a year for what he brings is interesting, but he is only 23. We just had Matt Peck of Locked On Bulls on, so if you're interested in Matt Peck's take on it, go back and on YouTube, maybe just go back like 5 or 10 minutes or so, go listen to our conversation with Matt Peck if you want to hear about Bulls stuff. Other deals going through right now, JaMychal Green returning to the Nuggets, 2 years, $17 million deal. Alec Burks, here's Woj, finally, Woj is awake. 3 years, $30 million deal to return to the Knicks. Alec Burks had some pretty good moments for the Knicks last year.
He just can't stay healthy. Like, when he played, he was really, really good. And then he just busted his ankle about 3 or 4 times, it felt like. And then he would come back and he'd work his way back into the rotation, into good minutes, and then he'd play well. But then, Thibodeau had this issue with playing Reggie Bullock ahead of him and Alfred Payton ahead of him when they could have just been, let's just put the ball in. He's not a traditional point guard, but you can put the ball in his hands, especially when you've got Barrett and Randall out there as well. And he is a key piece for them. Oh, the Knicks are going with Nerlens Noel as well. And Rose was just working the Knicks phone here. 3 years, $32 million for
Leon
Nerlens
Rose
Noel.
is just keeping him on too long is basically what happened. He's like, I'll tell you all the stuff, but I'm going to hold
Woj,
you on.
I had the best dinner last night, Woj. Let me send you a photo. I'm like, all right, Leon. All right, let's move it on. 3 years, 32 for Nerlens.
Yeah, so there was a rumor before. I think it was Jake Fisher said he was going to get $10 million a year. That seems to be true now for Nerlens Noel. 3 years, $30 million, like $10 million a year for what Nerlens Noel brings. Is that worth it to you?
They still got Mitchell Robinson. They might bring back Taj Gibson. So Noel is good. Is $10 million a year for a backup center? Is it okay? Yeah, it's all right, I guess. Do the Knicks? Do the Knicks think they're better than they are? Oh, Jarrett Allen, 5-year, $100 million to stay in Cleveland. That is a lot. 5 years, $100 million after drafting Evan Mobley.
I need that as a drop. That is a lot.
That's that is a lot, especially again with Mobley there. I get you don't want to lose the asset, but it's a big amount. I like Jarrett Allen, but that's a lot.
That's a lot for Jarrett Allen. That was a deal that we heard possibly earlier. We also have go to Locked On Cavs on Twitter. They had a Locked On Now about that, kind of breaking down that deal already for Jarrett Allen, but. That pairing with Evan Mobley, you've been doing some work on some draft stuff for us. What do you think about the pairing of Jarrett Allen and Evan Mobley now for a while, like 4 years if they hold on to him for that long?
Yeah, that's I'm still trying to wrap my head around all these centers getting this big money here at the moment. 10 is for a backup for Noel, 20 for Allen, who they would hope would turn into a backup behind Evan Mobley. Do they envisage Mobley playing the 4 and having 2 non-shooters there?
Sounds like it.
I don't know, man.
Also, a couple of people are pointing out on Twitter that now the Knicks have, about $20 million signed off from Alec Burks and Nerlens Noel. That takes them out of some of these Derozan conversations and some of these other bigger free agent conversations, unless they can do something with the cap and their cap holds, right?
Yeah, because they don't have bird rights on those guys because they're only just 1 year. They've only been there with the team for 1 year, haven't they?
Oh, yeah, because they did all those real short deals, and a couple of them were like team options or non-guarantees on that, and people were making fun of their offseason, but it turned out it worked pretty well for them.
Yeah, so you can't go over the cap to re-sign these guys because they've only been there for 1 year. So if they had been long term, they could have just held off on re-signing them to bring other guys in over the cap. So it does eat into their cap space, yeah.
The Houston Rockets working to complete a multi-year deal with free agent center Daniel Theis. Woo.
Yes. Daniel Theis, I don't know why good teams weren't going after him. He's a really good player, and I don't know. Houston doesn't need him. What they bring him in to be the backup to Christian Wood to play next to Christian Wood. Houston's not going to be good this year. Good teams should have been going after Daniel Theis. That is a miss for other good teams. I don't really know why Houston's going for it. He's a good player, but he's not going to be part of their next good team. Weird one to me. Unless they're just trying to do it like what the Knicks did a few years ago with Marcus Morris. Let's sign him and then let's try and flip him later on, which I think would be fine.
So far, we've seen a whole bunch of moves happen. Let's go back to that Mike Conley to the Jazz move. I was a little surprised to see the number amount, but they were able to make that happen. They traded their draft pick. Host David Locke, talked about that on our draft show. So go watch that video if you're interested in why they decided to do that. But what's your take on Conley going back to the Jazz now?
I think it's a really good deal to bring him back at that price. We just got news on Kelly Olynyk going to Detroit, 3 years, 37. We'll talk about that in a sec. I think that is a good price for Conley. Yes, that hamstring is obviously bothering him for a couple of years, but I think he's in terms of what he actually does when he's on the court, he's worth more than that. That is, to me, a little bit of a discount. He is older, but he is still really, really useful at that price. And I think that puts the Jazz still in that conversation to be the number 1, number 2 seed in the Western Conference again.
Yeah, you mentioned Kelly Olynyk and Daniel Theis. So Kelly Olynyk now goes 3 years, $37 million with Detroit. What is up with these centers that could be useful for some of these contenders going to these teams like Detroit and Houston, the top 2 picks in the draft this year?
Yeah, look, the Pistons obviously got rid of Mason Plumlee, and we thought they were up to something. I thought that was so they were going to put fully entrust Isaiah Stewart to play big minutes there because they're not playing Olynyk at the 4, I'm guessing, because Jeremy Grant will be playing that position. So I don't really understand this. I think Olynyk's probably worth a little bit more than that, to be honest. He was excellent in Miami and in Houston last season. Good for him to get that money, but it is a little bit of a curious deal, and I'd be very interested to see what role they put Kelly in. But I talked with our Locked On Pistons host yesterday, Ku Khalil, talking about Detroit and whether they're looking at it and saying, well, we think Cade is this good that we're not actually going to be bad enough with him on the team that we can get a high pick. So maybe let's just start putting some pieces around, similar to the way that your Mavs did with Luka when he was there. Okay, we're not going to be this bad now that he's on this team. So we need to start making some moves to keep us improving and keep the players around developing at the right speed.
We have now coming in from Locked On Knicks, Gavin Shaw here to talk about Alec Burks, Nerlens, Noel. $20 million for Burks and Noel. How are you feeling about those deals, and what else do you think the Knicks are going to do today?
Wow, I am shocked by the Nerlens Noel news. So shocked. I'd not yet heard the Alec Burks news. What was the contract for Burks?
It was 3 years, 32, 30, yeah.
Yeah, that was
30.
Oh, wow. So essentially the same contract. Yeah.
Yep.
The Nerlens one I really don't get. To me, it's almost a sign that they don't think they're going to be able to afford Mitchell Robinson either in an extension this year or in an unrestricted free agency next season. I'm shocked that they're bringing him back. Not that he wasn't a good fit in New York, but he was a poorer version of Robinson in just about every capacity. Really struggled catching the ball around the rim. And
been there.
There was a notion in New York at different points when Robinson got hurt that Nerlens could essentially do the same thing at a cheaper price. And that was pretty definitively proven incorrect, even though they played well with him in terms of wins and losses. There was a distinct drop-off in team rebounding, and he's just not anywhere close to the same offensive threat as we saw in the Atlanta series. The Burks contract, I don't mind as much, but it still feels a little weird when you think they're going to make a major upgrade on the wing at some point. I don't know why they would lock themselves into him for 3 years.
Real quick, Woj just said Conley is 3 years, $72.5 million deal. So a little bit more than what Sham said, about $4 million more. So a little different. But going back to the Knicks, so you think that this is a sign for Mitchell Robinson that they're not going to be able to keep him or afford him? What would be the reason that they wouldn't be able to bring him back, and where do you think he would go? Or do you think they're going to do a trade or something else?
Yeah, so I'm saying I think that's far from a guarantee. It's definitely not something I know for sure, but just given the money they're allocating to Nerlens, and they're going to the whole point of all of this is that they're going to make one, if not two, star swings at some point. I don't know how you can pour I don't know. However, I mean, what would it be? $30 million a year, given the contract Jared Allen just got between the two of them, like $20 million for Mitch, 10 for Nerlens into the center position. When you're going to have to extend RJ Barrett at some point, obviously Julius is going to get his contract. Then you want a Damian Lillard in here, and you want another star to complement those guys. It doesn't really add up. So I'm kind of stunned by this because I'm really, really high on Mitch, and I just don't see any upside in that Nerlens deal.
Not to put you on the spot, but when does Mitchell Robinson's contract come up? Could this be a this season thing where he's on the move, or do you think it's a next season? Or
so he's restricted. Oh, he would have been restricted this offseason, but they essentially delayed that for another year. They can still negotiate an extension with him if they choose to, which is something that a lot of people thought was pretty plausible. But now with this Nerlens news, I'd be kind of surprised if it happened.
Interesting moves for the Knicks. What else is on the horizon there for the New York Knicks, do you think, today? I think Bobby Marks, you said they have about $17 million in room still.
Yeah, well, Evan Fournier was rumored to be in line for something around a 3-year, $54 million contract offer for the Knicks. Obviously, that's going to go down $1 million after this move. I guess 3 for 51 would be what they could offer him. And I mean, I think he's a massive need, but given that they got Burks, again, it's almost similar. I would say Fournier is the Mitchell Robinson of sort of the wing position. Then I'd kind of be surprised if they splurge for both those guys because you sort of expect them to play similar roles. Maybe Fournier instead is replacing Reggie Bullock in that starting lineup. But Fournier is a very different player, and he's more in Burks' mold in terms of being a guy who can create a bit off the dribble, who can shoot the three. Certainly a better player than Burks, but I don't know why you would bring Burks back if you were also going to bring in Fournier. Maybe just to have more shooting and ball handling, two things the Knicks certainly needed, but it feels like a little bit of overlap and an inefficient allocation of cap, again, especially when the Knicks presumably wanted to have a lot of money in the tank for next summer. So all these moves are very, very confusing. Maybe they're just accumulating contracts for a trade down the road, and they think the numbers that they got these guys are movable. I would kind of disagree with that notion unless there's some late career improvement for both of them, but I guess we'll see going forward.
There were talks, we talked earlier with Matt Peck of Locked On Bulls about Derrick Rose going back to the Bulls. What's your thoughts on Derrick Rose with the Knicks? And then where do you think he goes? Or does he stay with the Knicks this offseason?
Yeah, so there's a case that Rose was maybe the Knicks' best player the final 30 games of the season or so through the playoffs. He was certainly the only guy who showed up consistently in that Atlanta series. That being said, I'm okay with them moving on from him. I mean, depending on who the alternative is at the point guard spot. Obviously, Lonzo Ball was sort of the name that the Knicks were bandying around all season long. That's now off the table. All the big fish, Chris Paul obviously going back to Phoenix, Kyle Lowry seemingly going to Miami. So I'm not 100% sure what they would do at the point guard position if Rose wasn't the name coming back. At the same time, given his age, his injury history, I'm okay with them not allocating long-term money there. And I think Emmanuel Quickley is eventually going to be the guy to man that spot, but they need someone who can get dribble penetration at the time being, because Rose was essentially the only player who provided that with any kind of consistency for the Knicks last year.
There you go. Gavin Shaw, Locked On Knicks. Go listen to that stuff. There's going to be some interesting conversations today, I'm sure, with you and Alex Wolf about Nerlens Noel and Alec Burks and what else they do in free agency. I
haven't talked to Alex yet. I'm kind of scared to hear his reaction. I feel bad, Nick. I keep coming on these Locked On shows in a state of utter depression. It's not good. We're supposed to be on the upswing. I want to be more optimistic. But yeah, weird start to the Knicks offseason.
I'll pull back the curtain a little bit, and then I brought you on for the first pick for the Knicks to do an interview in our live show, and you're like, okay, here we go. This is the pick, and you're waiting for it. And then they traded that pick. And then I brought you back for the next pick, and then they traded that one too. I just kept bringing you back, and they just kept trading it. And you were like, I don't know what they're doing. I don't understand.
I know. I feel bad. I just come on. I'm like, yeah, I'm confused. I don't know. I don't know what to say.
We eventually got you on there. But
yeah, we figured it out. But yeah.
Gavin Shaw, go follow him. Locked On Knicks, the podcast as well. We're going to bring in now Ku Cahill, the Locked On Pistons host. The biggest deal of the day, Kelly Olynyk.
I guess.
How are you feeling about that deal and just your thoughts on the Pistons today in general?
So, I've been saying for the longest that I really wanted the Pistons to go after like a rim running lob threat to pair with Killian Hayes and Kate Cunningham.
Did not get one of those.
Yeah, did not. Just went completely the opposite direction there. But it does make sense. There was two different ways to go in. They could have went the way I was talking about, but they also could have went with the floor spacing big guy that keeps the floor space for everybody. The multiple ball handlers they're going to have out there. So, yeah, they went with Kelly Olynyk. I actually thought that he was going to make more than that on a shorter deal. I thought he was going to make a lot more than $12 million. I thought he was going to be up there like around $15 million. So I guess it's not that bad of a deal. But yeah, Kelly Olynyk, he obviously fills a need. They need a backup center or a starting center, whichever way they go. So it definitely was high on the needs, and I guess they went with the space over the rim runner.
Let's go in the Pistons division here. Jared Allen, that 5-year, $100 million deal. What's your thoughts on Jared Allen getting that big of a deal from the Cavs?
I mean, I was talking to Keith Smith and on Twitter on the podcast yesterday. I mentioned him, like, it feels like everybody's just getting paid $20 million nowadays. So I don't know if that's like expensive or not, but Jared Allen, definitely, him and Evan Mobley is going to be probably not something I'm going to like having to go against. What is it, 4 times a year now in the division? So yeah, it'd be interesting to watch. It's going to be fun to see Mobley and Allen. They also have probably the skinniest. I saw someone tweet this out and I agree with them. It's like the skinniest starting lineup of all time.
Let's see. Evan Mobley, Jared Allen, Okoro, Sexton if he stays, and Garland. Yeah, that's a pretty skinny lineup today. Josh Lloyd, what else are we seeing on the rumor front? Is anybody else sticking out to you? Anything else that's happened? I'm seeing the official cap number for the season this year, 112 million. So now we're getting you're seeing a lot of tweets about Damian Lillard's final number after his extension and all that.
Yeah, so we've got that, and the tax line set at 136.5 million. We've got TJ McConnell going back to Indiana, but no details on the length or the amount of money on that one, but we do have that from Jay Michael in Indiana. He's reported that one. So we've got that McConnell deal. There's the Theis deal that we haven't got confirmation on the price and the length of that one yet as well. So we're still waiting on that info. But that's all I've really seen. No other. A few people got by a fake Shams tweet about DeMar DeRozan going to the Pelicans. So don't fall for that one if anyone's seen it. That is not a real tweet. That is, we're hearing the rumors about Danny Green and Dwight Howard back to the Lakers as well, but nothing confirmed there either.
Let's bring in Tony East, Locked On Pacers. We'll just make it a party, gentlemen. We'll just bring everybody in right now. TJ McConnell going back to the Pacers. Are we celebrating, or is it a steal? Like TJ McConnell steals?
Not sure about the terms exactly yet, but yeah, I also heard he's coming back, which is good for the Pacers. It was the most expected move. I think they were probably going to have to decide monetarily between Doug McDermott and TJ McConnell at some point anyway, unless they're able to make a trade in the next couple hours. So McConnell, given their draft night trade of giving up Aaron Holiday to Washington, they had a big hole at point guard. Perfect fit for what they needed. Fresh off their team, he wanted to come back. It makes all the sense in the world, and he's coming back. So the Pacers fill their biggest need at backup point guard and get the guy who made a lot of sense for them last year.
So your indications that Doug McDermott will be gone, they have to make that decision, or you think he's staying this year?
I think they would like to keep him, and I think he would like to stay in Indiana, which in theory sounds like it's a great fit for free agency, but the luxury tax does not agree with their both of those sides' thoughts. So, I think if they're able to make a cost-cutting deal that can fit him in, right, I think a lot of the reporting is correct that he will get just over or about the mid-level exception. So if they can find enough space to keep him in, whether that's a Jeremy Lamb trade for less salary or a Miles Turner trade for less salary or something, then they'll try to keep him. But I think he, because of his shooting, will have suitors, especially with contenders elsewhere. So, they'll try. I think he'll go maybe a little later in the day, or tomorrow even. But I'm imagining that because they chose McConnell here, that he will be gone.
Jordan Clarkson just tweeted out Mountain Mike as Mike Conley's nickname. Are we for or against Mountain Mike as Conley's nickname?
That's a huge thumbs down.
Yeah, are you in or out? You're out.
I don't know about that one.
He's from Indianapolis. His name is Midwest Mike, and there is no alternative that I will accept.
Yeah, went to Ohio State. We got 2 Eastern Conference, hosts in here. What's your thoughts on the Kyle Lowry to the Miami Heat deal? What does it make for, what does Miami now become? We've had discussions earlier in the show about, are they better than Atlanta now? Do we consider them a threat? Koo, we'll start with you. What's your thoughts on Kyle Lowry to the Miami Heat?
So that was made official already?
It's been for 24 hours or so. We've been knowing that's going to happen.
Fair enough. I don't know. I think.
Are you worried about tampering?
No, I'm talking about did we know specifics of the trade or whatever yet? But
yeah, are they exactly what we heard yesterday?
Yeah.
Okay, so are they better than Atlanta with Kyle Lowry? I think so. Do I think they move in the tier 1? No, but I think they're probably better than Atlanta. Yeah, with Kyle Lowry.
We have now from Chris Haynes, Cameron Payne agreed to re-sign with the Suns, 3-year, $19 million deal for Cameron Payne, a guy that was out of the league a little while ago. So shouts to him. Just about 6 years, or six per, which is what we were talking about earlier, Josh.
Yep, exactly. Mav Summer League rescued him.
They did. Yeah. Mavs Summer League. We knew exactly what we were doing then. Tony, what's your thoughts on Kyle Lowry with the Heat as another Eastern Conference team? Where does that put them in terms of the hierarchy in the East?
I think that puts them pretty high up. You know, when they were really good in the 2020 playoffs, they had great ball handling from Dragic in creation. They had great ball handling in creation from Kendrick Nunn and Tyler Hero, right? They were all playing at the absolute apex of their games. And last year, all of them were not quite at that level. And that's part of the reason, among a few, why that team was worse last year. So I think adding a guy like Lowry, who A, immediately fits with the culture of that team and is very talented, but also B, can give them back that lead ball handling creator that they didn't have last year, will push them up very high in the Eastern Conference hierarchy. And they didn't have to give up too much. It sounds like, per some reporting, that it's just going to be Dragic, Precious Achiuwa, and a second rounder. And who knows what the Raptors end up doing with those pieces. But, you know, I think that's a good sign and trade value for both teams. So good for the Heat. I think they'll move up quite a bit. They were only a few games ahead of the Pacers last year, who I cover, but now they'll be, I believe, way ahead of the Pacers talent-wise. So that's a good deal for them, and I think that's a good fit for both sides. Another deal I want to talk about as a person who covers the Pacers is not to watch Kelly Olynyk play against the Pacers 4 times every season because they're in the same division. And I do not like watching Kelly Olynyk because he hurt he hurt Kevin Love in the playoffs that one year. So I'm not excited for that, but I think that's a good fit for the Pistons. So congratulations to the Pistons on getting a center on day one like they always do.
Yeah, that's nothing new. Going back last year, they got 3 of them. So let's see if they keep it going.
A tradition unlike any other. The Pistons going after a center day one on free agency.
So
Josh,
that campaign deal is a good deal for the Suns. I like that at only a little over $6 million per season.
It's really, really good. They needed him back. Really, he was really important to what they did, and that is, I thought he could have got more than that. I thought he could have got almost $10 million a year. Really,
I agree.
Do you think he kind of pulled the disappearing act a couple of times there in the finals and late in the Western Conference Finals? Do you think that had anything to do with the number that he finally ended up with?
Most likely, I would say. But Josh, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it probably would have had some sort of an impact, but I don't know. I'm just not. If you're making decisions based on 1 or 2 games versus over the life of a 3-year contract, it feels a little bit reactionary. But that's how GMs work a lot of the times, anyway.
We've had a couple of minutes now to kind of process this Jimmy Butler massive, huge extension. Josh, what are your thoughts now about Jimmy Butler going back at he's going to be making $50 million at the end of this deal?
There is absolutely no doubt it's going to be a horrible contract at the end of it. By the age 35, 36, he's making $50 million. It is going to be bad. There is no doubt about that. He already can't shoot threes, and he's given up on doing that. Defensively, he's still good, but he is not LeBron, because nobody is, and he's not going to be anywhere close to that level in the last probably 2 years of that contract. But understanding you're making a move for Kyle Lowry, you're trying to get a title in the next 2 years, you got to do it, but it's going to be real tough at the end. It's going to be very ugly, I think.
Cool. What's your thoughts on Jimmy Butler now going back to the Heat for that huge, massive contract? Is it going to be a disaster like Josh Lloyd kind of put there?
Yeah, I think it's probably going to be pretty bad at the end for all the reasons he just laid out. Kind of look at it the same way. I think we probably were going to look at the same way you look at Westbrook's contract towards the end of it now, even though Westbrook's he's not old and he's not probably going to be not as bad than Jimmy Butler was then, but still kind of looked at it the same way with how people just absolutely can't stand the contract and just stay away from it. Yeah, definitely probably the last 2 seasons. I don't get why teams pay that much money to guys when they know they're going to be like 35, 36, making $50 million a year. I just don't know why that happens.
I mean, we just saw it with Chris Paul. I mean, he just turned down a $44 million deal. Tony, you're shaking your head at me. You think that maybe this deal might not be as bad as we think it could be?
Yeah, I mean, he's like one of the best 15 players in the NBA. You always pay that guy.
Are we sure Jimmy Butler is a top 15 player? Let me go full Bill Simmons on this one.
Yeah,
I'll say yes, and I think Josh will say yes with me.
Yeah, this year, yes, I would have said he was, and I think that he probably will be close to that next year. It's more that the back end of that.
Sure.
Now, I've got a thought for you. I think that this is a very wide-ranging thought, that the way that the NBA salary cap and contract scenarios and restricted free agency and max salaries, the way that all that's set up is, I think, 4 years, 35 for TJ McConnell. So you can just marinate on that, Tony, while I talk for a second.
A little bigger than I thought you would get.
The way that it's set up is that all players, they can't be probably fairly compensated during the primes of their career because of the restrictions. So inevitably, it leads to players getting rewarded for past contributions, which in the end makes us I don't know if it taints their legacy, but we look at it and go, oh, what a shit contract. $50 million for Jimmy Butler at age 36. That's horrendous. It's going to let him move on. He's going to be bounced around the league because Jimmy Butler at age 28 wasn't able to be paid those huge amounts of money, same as Chris Paul, that we reward them for what they've done in the past. And to me, it's a little bit of like backwards thinking, because you don't want to, like, if to make a sports team good, you want to be rewarding the players as they move into that contract. Very similar to like when Mike Conley first signed his extension deal back with Memphis. People thought that was an overpay, and then he grew into it and it looked like a great contract. But the way that things are set up is that we inevitably overpay these older guys, because you can't pay them that much when they're 26 or 27. That the structure of everything leads to everyone's going to be in this boat, that you have to reward these guys when they get to this age. And nearly every single time, it's going to look like a horrible contract at the end, which has a negative impact on, I guess, player legacy or the way we remember them when they go out, because we're paying them so much money. Now, that's just a thought, and you have to change the whole structure of the CBA and the way the league goes. But to me, you're not rewarding players when they're actually producing at that value, rather than you're paying them for what they did in the past, which I think very rarely goes well.
You could say that was some life advice there, because that kind of seems to happen sometimes in some of the other businesses around
it does
in the world. It seems like. Kuka Hill, appreciate you jumping on. Locked On Pistons. What else are you looking forward to the Pistons doing today? Anything else before we let you go?
Seeing if they resign Hamidou Diallo and Frank Jackson today, if either one of them get a offer sheet from another team, or if they simply resign them, or if they pull off a trade using some of the salary with Dennis Smith's junior salary cap hold right now, or Rodney McGruder's cap hold right now. I think the Pistons aren't done. They're probably going to pull off another few moves, so I'll wait to see what they do.
Oh, my boy Dennis Smith Jr. We're not thinking he's coming back.
Absolutely not. The only reason why his cap hasn't been renounced, because we might use it in like a sign and trade.
What Rick Carlisle did for Dennis Smith Jr., I think, Tony, is maybe the biggest biggest endorsement I could give to Rick Carlisle as a coach, because he turned him into like a real player.
Well, wait till we see what he can do with the almost $9 million man TJ McConnell now.
Absolutely great. Cool. Thanks for joining us. Go follow Locked On Pistons, Locked On Pistons podcast. Great stuff over there. Tony, you've had a couple minutes to think about this TJ McConnell move. Your thoughts on it now?
This is about what I expected. Money-wise, I predicted about $8 to $10 million in podcasts and writing over the last week or so. It's a little rosy given the backup point guard market this year, but I think that they got the average value down under $9 million because they gave him the 4 years, which I think is what he wanted. He just had a kid this past season. He really likes Indiana. He's bounced around on like a non-guaranteed minimums with Philly for forever, and then only a 2-year deal with the Pacers. So he finally gets the length of the deal he wants. He fits really well with the culture the Pacers want to instill. He likes the new coaching staff. He likes his teammates. So he wanted that longer-term deal, and he got the money that he deserved. He played extremely well for the Pacers last year, led the league in steals, career high in points and assists. And now the Pacers have their backup point guard position filled up for the next about a half decade. I think, again, he'll fit well with what Carlisle likes to do as a coach. So, yeah, I think it's about fair value for McConnell. I like the deal, and he'll be good for basically all of that time.
I almost got faked out by the fake Shams DeMar DeRozan to the Clippers tweet just now.
There's been multiple fake Shams and multiple fake DeRozan tweets. But, Tony, let me ask you this about McConnell. Would you have rather paid that contract to TJ or to Cameron Payne? Because Payne's gone for $3 million less with one fewer guaranteed year. I would probably rather Cam Payne at that amount. I know McConnell is better defensively, but which one of those backup point guards would you prefer?
I think I agree with you that Cam Payne maybe is a little bit better of the two, especially as a scorer. But I think role-wise and the way McConnell plays on a team where the bench is not full of any really ball-handling threats right now, who knows what Duarte will be. But if the Pacers' second unit is going to end up being, O'Shea Brissett, Justin Holiday, and Chris Duarte and McConnell, or maybe Goga's in there too, they really need ball handling and setting up off-ball guys in a way that McConnell can provide, in a way that Cam Payne kind of can't. He definitely is a better self-creator. So I agree with you that Payne's value is probably better, but I think McConnell's fit with the Pacers is better, and part of the reason they wanted to bring him in.
I'm curious about Miles Turner. It feels like we've had Miles Turner trade rumors for like years and years now. What are your thoughts on Miles Turner, the construction of this team? Are the Pacers done, or do you think that there's another move that they're going to try and make a big swing or change up the roster a little bit?
If they keep O'Shea Brissett and Keelan Martin, which I would guess they end up keeping both, though it's possible that Keelan is on the move. They already have 14 guys, so they're basically done. They'll have to do maybe a mini mid-level thing, but they're probably done. But with Turner, he's only got 2 years left on his deal at this point anyway. They just drafted a guy who should naturally play center in the NBA. It's about time for them to decide what they're going to do with his future. It's been time, frankly, but this summer made a lot of sense given their cap situation, but Carlisle seems to want to coach him and get some stuff out of him. So we'll see what happens with him. I think now or the deadline makes a lot of sense, because next season when he's expiring, his value will certainly be less. So the sooner the better with that. But, I understand why they wouldn't right now. That said, I think they maybe should be thinking about it a little stronger than they are.
Chris Martinez in the chat. I'm just giving you that one time. Just giving you it one time. It's not rumors anymore. These are things that are happening now. I guess maybe there's still rumors because they can't sign, but I had to hit you with the rumor has it drop one more time. Couple other deals. This Kyle Lowry's now Instagramming Miami Heat times Kyle Lowry. Let's go. Fire emoji, fire emoji, fire emoji, fire emoji, fire emoji. That seems to be pretty official from Kyle Lowry here on Twitter. So now the Kyle Lowry thing, we can bring Koo back and tell him that it is official. He doesn't have to worry anymore about the tampering or anything like that with Kyle Lowry. So that has happened now. Sometimes I go back and I look at some of these deals and say, okay, well, at the beginning they were saying, well, there's this relationship between Jimmy Butler and Kyle Lowry. Josh, that seems to be a real big deal for players now. The relationship between guys. You had the Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving thing last year or a couple years ago. You now have this Kyle Lowry and Jimmy Butler thing. There was LeBron and Westbrook type talks. Like, friendship in the NBA is maybe the most valuable commodity right now.
Well, before we talk about friendship, I'll tell you that Duncan Robinson's just signed 5 years, $90 million to remain in Miami. That is, it's a lot. I know he's a really good shooter. That they are committed to paying a lot of money. So they're gonna,
that's about the same as the Tim Hardaway Jr. deal, just 1 year longer.
Yeah, it's almost Jarrett Allen money.
Are we going to look back on this Duncan Robinson deal as as Alan Crabb, or are we going to look at this as a Joe Harris?
I don't know. Look, he's old, isn't he? Isn't he 27 already, Robinson? So, yeah, but I imagine by the age, let me just confirm that age.
27, yep. Yeah, born in 94.
Yeah, so will he be 32 by the end of that, making not a huge amount of money? I don't think, I think it looks like it's a lot, but remember, Davis Bertans got 5 years, $80 million, and obviously that is an overpay for where Bertans is. But I think Robinson is a better shooter than that. I'm just not. I like it a little bit, but I'm not thinking that it's not a steal. I know that much.
Oh, we just lost Tony East, but Torrey Craig, 2-year deal, $10 million with the Indiana Pacers. So that's maybe their last roster spot he just mentioned.
Yeah, good deal. Craig is obviously an important defensive player, and it doesn't do much offensively, but you can always throw him in there and play 15 minutes some nights, 25 minutes some nights, depending on what you need. I think it's a pretty good move to bring him in there. And they are obviously they think they're in win now mode by drafting a 24-year-old rookie and now bringing in a Torrey Craig who really has benefit on teams that are competing at a high level. But we'll see whether that actually ends up being true.
We should also note, as a podcast network, as two podcasters, as maybe our main jobs here, Woj tweeted, Duncan Robinson, host of the Long Shot Pod, has agreed to a 5-year, $90 million contract. Not Duncan Robinson, the shooter, not Duncan Robinson, the Miami Heat guard, but Duncan Robinson, host of the Long Shot Pod. Josh Lloyd, what does this mean for podcasters everywhere that now they're being mentioned? First line of a new, that's maybe the greatest advertisement for a podcast ever, right?
Yeah, it is.
Woj today.
Woj can tweet out my new locked on contract at 5 years, $90 million if he likes as well. He can tag me in that. I'd be pretty happy if he wants to do that. But I didn't even see that part of it. That is a wild plug.
And he says he's also the largest deal for an undrafted player ever.
Yes, and there's an ETO after the 4th year, which is basically like a player option, but not exactly the same.
Yeah, early termination option is the ETO there, which, like you said, is basically a player option, but there's a little bit different. But, man, that is a lot of money for that podcaster, Duncan Robinson.
The money's all in podcasting, Nick, as you know.
Have you heard the podcast? I don't know if I've listened to his podcast.
I have never heard the podcast.
Now it's getting so much plug here on this show, people will be checking it out, I think. Any other deals were mentioned? We've been trying to get Jake Madison. He's having some internet issues. Locked On Pelicans talk about what they're trying to do over there. But let's see. We've had the Torrey Craig one, the Duncan Robinson deal. We've talked about the Jared Allen. We've talked about Kyle Lowry. Let's go in the chat. Give me some questions. If you guys have questions about what's going on right now, I'm sure they'll all be Mavs questions. Who are we getting? But let us know in the chat if you guys have any questions.
Everyone's keen to hear about DeMar DeRozan. That's the name that I keep seeing bandied about in the chat.
DeMar DeRozan, what are his options right now? He could go to the Knicks for like 17 million. He could go to the Mavericks. They still have some room that they can make a deal or maybe some kind of sign-in trade unless they do the Dragic thing.
Dougie McDermott's just gone to the Spurs for 3 years, 42.
Ooh, 3 years, $42 million for a Doug McDermott. They had a bunch of money over there in San Antonio. It was interesting to see what they were going to do with that.
I don't mind that. But you honestly, 3 years, not that long. The money's okay. Helps with their spacing and shooting. Like, when you've got DeMar DeRozan and Keldon Johnson playing the 3 and the 4, and both those guys are, not shooting threes at all. Like maybe McDermott starts, maybe he doesn't, but it brings in some really nice shooting, especially if they're going to lose someone like Patty Mills, which is a possibility. I think it doesn't take them to become a really good team, but in terms of cost and length of contract and role that he can fill, I think that's pretty good for McDermott.
Couple questions in the chat. We'll get rapid fire. Then we'll bring in Jake Madison. Do the Mavericks have John Collins money? No, they do not. Sean Woodley, our Locked On Raptors host, passed on a note to me via text message, says, I am sad. That was what our Locked On Raptors host wanted to share. Where does DeMar DeRozan go? There's still some options there for him. It seems now, I don't know if there's a team out there that can outright sign him. I think someone would have to make some kind of trade or something because the Mavericks only have a couple, 14 million left or so. What do you think is a good move for the Blazers? Josh, we'll give you that as I bring in Jake Madison. What's a good move for the Portland Trail Blazers to do right now?
Well, they're going to need a backup center, and I think they need another point guard, really. I wouldn't be entrusting my backup point guard minutes solely to TJ McConnell and Anthony Simons. I think they need a ball handler. I think they need forwards, and they need a backup center. Now, who that player is, I've got no idea at this stage, but if they could, that's what they need to be bringing. Obviously, they need to look to bring back Norman Powell as well on the wing, and that helps them a little bit there. But they do need to bring in a backup center. I think having that Enes Kanter, Carmelo Anthony bench combo was not ideal. So they need maybe it's someone like an Alex Len that they look to bring in who can just handle 15, 16, 18 minutes a night and be okay. There, Dwayne Dedmon's a name that I'm always going to bring up. Robin Lopez could go back to Portland. I think that's the sort of player they're looking for. And then they need some sort of point guard with my other aim for Portland, I think.
36-year-old Chris Paul, 4 years, $120 million to come back to the Suns, according to Adrian Wojnarowski. What is up with these old guys? Like Josh went on your big talk about, older players getting their due at the end of their contract. This is maybe the biggest example of that.
Yeah, look, I'll get Jake, we'll get you 1 sec on that. Like Chris Paul is worth this money 10 years ago. At 40, he won't be, but that's the price you pay for the way the CBA is structured, I guess.
Let's bring in now Jake Madison, Locked On Pelicans. Lonzo Ball, he's gone. Lonzo Ball is gone. What is up with the Pelicans losing Lonzo Ball, not wanting to re-sign him? What's your thoughts on that and what the Pelicans are doing today?
Yeah, it wasn't the best start to free agency for the Pelicans, with that being the first news. Also, I think I'm going to go with Gonzo Ball. Is that better than the one you just did?
Should I change it?
Yeah, that's better.
Yeah, I think it's got to be Gonzo Ball, right? So look, it was just I think what the Pelicans are trying to do right now is not take on a bad contract. I think they see the limitations in Lonzo Ball's game. Paying him over $20 million a year, I think, scared them a little bit, and is partially why they didn't want to end up bringing him back at that money. He was a restricted free agent. They could have matched, but bringing back an unhappy guy that doesn't want to be there, that's not necessarily the type of culture, locker room atmosphere I think they want to put around Zion Williamson. They avoided taking any real bad contracts back in this. I think Garrett Temple at $5 million is fine. Thomas Satoransky, I think it's unguaranteed. I have to take a look. I'm trying to kind of react in the moment here.
I think they guaranteed that to make the deal.
Yeah, they guaranteed it today.
Okay, gotcha. So it's not the worst thing. There's nothing long-term coming back poor for New Orleans. It gives them still flexibility to use some of the picks that they have from the Anthony Davis trade, the Drew Holiday trade, to try and build more around Zion Williamson. But look, not getting Kyle Lowry, I just heard the Chris Paul deal too, not getting any of those kind of big-name point guards that they were really hoping for. Certainly it's not the ideal start. for what the Pelicans wanted to do this offseason.
So what's the move now for the Pelicans? Lonzo is gone. They now bring in a couple pieces for him. They still have some space, right? What's the move now for the Pelicans?
Yeah, with that, they probably, I'm doing like the math in my head, have right around 20 million to spend or so. So we'll see what they do with it. But, all the big names are kind of off the board. There's no one really out there that looks particularly appealing to me. So I think it's just don't set up for like a lot of long-term bad stuff by signing guys to bad deals that you don't want to have on your books long-term. I'm not sure. I worry about a guy like Spencer Dinwiddie coming in at, say, $20 million or so. And what that would do to the team. But I think they could still go any number of directions, but this is definitely a big swing and a miss for him to start. I really don't know the direction that they should go at this point in time.
Somebody Tommy Beer just tweeted that Chris Paul will have made $420 million just on-court earnings. Josh Lloyd, that is an incredible sum of money for playing basketball and for making one finals.
Yeah, no, good for him. Like he's a legendary player. He's one of the best point guards of all time. Get as much money as you possibly can. These owners can spare that money. Take as much as you can. It's fantastic for him. My issue is not with him getting the money. It's the way that it gets structured that it does lead to us going, gee, that's terrible for Chris Paul, as we've been saying for 5 years. What a horrible contract where it really devalues what the player's brought over his career.
Jake Madison, any other thoughts about let me ask you a question. What's your take on this whole Zion is unhappy? His family is coming out and saying he doesn't want to be in New Orleans. It seems like that's like the driving point for some of these rumors about around the Pelicans. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so look, there's truth to that. This is a guy who I think is doing historic things in the NBA earlier in his career than maybe he was expecting, than the team was expecting, than his family was expecting him to do. And when you have a talent like that, you don't want to see it squandered, with a franchise that historically has done that. Whether it's Chris Paul, who you guys were just talking about, then Anthony Davis. I think they're worried about history repeating itself. The team the past 2 years has very much underachieved. Last year, they weren't even able to get in as the 10th seed with a healthy team for the most part, built around Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson. It means there's some discontentment there, and they're worried about the long-term future and outlook for Zion, who wants to start building his legacy. And we're probably a year away from, any talk about him wanting out, anything like that. But some of that's real. He's done all of the right things himself so far in terms of what he said. But it's also, a family member looking around him and being like, maybe this isn't the best thing for it. And I think that's where some of this comes. And look, the Pelicans, their front office, the organization is definitely feeling that a little bit. Hence why they really tried to kind of clear the books to go after a guy like Kyle Lowry that they thought would be able to really make a difference on this team, get him into the playoffs right now. And now it's just going to be about hitting singles and maybe doubles for New Orleans. Nothing sexy, but guys that can shoot the three, that handle the ball reasonably well to try and continue to build around him and Brandon Ingram. And look, by the way, on the Chris Paul front, I'm 35, so I'm excited about all these older guys getting paid big time. And I'm going to reach out to David Locke and be like, we got to talk. I see Chris Paul getting paid. Maybe it's my turn.
Between that and the Duncan Robinson, the long shot pod drop from Woj today, where he referenced Duncan Robinson's podcast in his tweet, we're winning today on that front.
There we go. It also made me laugh that they threw Clutch Sports in with everything with Lonzo Ball right away and right off of the bat. You've got to get that branding front and center to know who earned him that, $85 million contract it was?
Do you think Lonzo Ball is worth that deal?
If I were the Pelicans, I would have matched. I just wouldn't have played into this and done a sign and trade, especially unless they've got another move lined up, right? If they don't and they kind of end up striking out in free agency, I think matching that would have been the move, even if I'm not thrilled about it. I think at $21.5 million, that's a tradable contract for a guy who's going to be going into his 5th year in the league, who's improved. If you know what his limitations are, you kind of play him more as a wing. I think that's fine. I would have matched. I wouldn't have been thrilled about it, but keeping assets here in New Orleans that you can then use later on down the line, I think would have been important.
Jake Madison, Locked On Pelicans, Locked On NBA on Wednesdays. Go check them out there. I'm sure you'll have lots of thoughts, lots of talks. Didn't get Devontae Graham today, which maybe you thought you would, but
I'm okay with it.
Still some good stuff from Jake Madison. Thanks for joining us. Oh, man, he's okay with not getting Devontae Graham today, right at the end there. Let's react to this Chris Paul deal. This is an absolutely huge, massive deal for Chris Paul. Bobby Marks brought up an interesting point I forgot about. There's an over 38 rule in the CBA. We're not allowed to offer multiple year deals to somebody over the age of 38.
It's not
the CBA, right?
Yeah, you're not allowed to offer certain length deals. So I'm a little bit confused.
I have to go check out the CBA FAQ real quick.
Woj's tweet says the deal could be worth as much as 120. So does that mean that there's non-guarantees at the back end of it? Like, is that 4th year non-guaranteed? So that's a weird wording to put in there. But there is, I thought that over the over 38 rule or whatever it is, over 36 or whatever it is, you can't be more than 3 years signed. I can't remember 100%. Yeah, you check out the CBA FAQ, but there is definitely a rule there. And having a contract that long at that age seems a little odd. Very reminiscent of the remember that, I think it was the Luis Scola deal that Houston signed, was it, at one point, where they had to redo the contract because they signed him for too long?
What is the over 38 rule? There's a bunch of stuff in there, and there's a lot of things. I don't really care about it. But what I care about, as a niche podcaster, I do care about that rule. But just in terms of the big picture, what it means for everybody.
Here we go. I've got the Keith Smith. Because the Suns have full bird rights on Chris Paul, his new deal won't trigger the over 38 rule.
There you go. So it won't.
Keith knows his CBA, so that we are good with that. And
that's how we can. That's how we then determine that this works. So, but Chris Paul, now he's going to be with the Suns for a while now. It seems like. Is this the worst contract in the NBA? Like, right? Do we keep doing that over and over again? By the time he hits that end year, he'll be 40, right?
Yeah, he will be. So is that going to be worse, or the $50 million for Jimmy Butler going to be worse?
50 million for Chris Paul at 40, or 50 million for Jimmy Butler at what, 38, 37?
Nah, but Paul's will only be 40 million though. And Butler, because Butler's is an extension, so it was 4 years on top of next year's contract. So Butler will get to 37 by the end of that. So we'll misrepresenting that earlier on. So he'll be 30, getting close to 37, and he's getting paid 50 million, or Paul at 40 million at age 40. I don't know. They're both pretty bad. I don't know which one's worse.
I mean, they both have taken their team to a finals recently. Chris Paul, better shooter. Jimmy Butler relying on those 3 a.m. wake-up calls with
at some point he's got to sleep in, man. Just get some rest, Jim.
You think after he signs this deal he sleeps in?
Hopefully. He won't, but hopefully he does. He's drinking too much coffee.
Let's do predictions in the chat. Where do we think DeMar DeRozan is going? Because Josh, that seems to be the guy that is like the best player still available. Am I right?
Or outside of Kawhi Leonard, of course.
Well, yeah. I mean, you think Kawhi Leonard's going back to the Clippers? There's no other.
Yeah, I don't really see it going any other way. I actually think the best available player, not including John Collins, because the match rights there. I think it's probably Spencer Dinwiddie, to be honest. But I think he's better than DeMar DeRozan. Yeah, I think Dinwiddie's a better player than DeRozan for this year. He's 3 years younger as well. I know he's coming off a partially torn ACL, but he's the guy that I would prioritize over DeMar. I think DeMar is probably. I wouldn't rule out the Knicks for him. They can still get some cap. I know they've signed some big deals. They can still get some cap space. It really depends on what he wants. He's the Knicks is an interesting one there for me. I don't think the Clippers is a realistic target. There just won't be enough salary there for him. Maybe it is Dallas because they have still got some space. I just don't know. It's gonna have. Is it that sign and trade for a double sign and trade with him and Larry Markin into Chicago? I don't know.
Let's see. It seems like we're sort of running out of rumors now. It seems like everybody shot their shot, and we didn't have 100 players. Some people were saying that we're going to be.
Yeah, I heard that yesterday, that someone expected 100 players to be signed in the first 24 hours. And we're only an hour in, so there's 23 more hours to go.
I guess
but I'm not sure we're going to get 100 players signed.
The Spencer Dinwiddie one is interesting. It seems like the only real talk we've heard is him getting that sign and trade to the Wizards. What would you think about Spencer Dinwiddie on the Wizards?
I think it's really good. Now, he is a poor three-point shooter, for sure. He's a guy that gets a lot of hype for the role that he had on the Nets, and some people do overrate him at times, but their other point guards are Aaron Holiday. Like, that's literally all they have at the moment. So he's obviously a significant upgrade there. He'd be a better option than, say, targeting Dennis Schroeder. And he's never really had that opportunity to be a starting point guard on a team. And I think he's a better option to me than Devontae Graham, who's restricted coming out of Charlotte. To me, he's the best realistically gettable player that is out there on the board ahead of DeRozan and not including Kawhi and John Collins.
You would put Dinwiddie over DeMar DeRozan, or You'd put Dinwiddie above Dragic as a player that's better right now available?
Yes. Yep, I think so. Again, much younger. Also, Dragic in his prime, probably better than what Dinwiddie is now, but that was 4 or 5 years ago, perhaps. So I would say that Dinwiddie would be the guy that I would be targeting there.
There you go. Any other thoughts on free agency? We're running now short. Unless something crazy happens, there's no one else seeming like they're going to be making some news right now. What's your final thoughts on free agency? And did anything change today? Let's go there.
Did anything change? Look, Miami did get better. Chicago got better. Are they better enough to be conference finals levels team? Well, Chicago, no. Miami, I think, no. So while it does change a few little things there, I'm not sure that it's massively league landscape changing. The Pelicans and Cavs and Pistons making some confusing-ish type deals, I guess, with the Pelicans. We still don't know what's happening for them at point guard. There's changes, but they're not. I don't think it's huge. It's not changing the betting market. That's a shout out to Bet Online. That's not changing that betting market for the title, I don't think.
Buddy Hield just tweeted, "It's a whole lot of money on this MF."
He can talk, can't he?
Do you think Buddy Hield stays in Sacramento? Do you think he gets moved today?
No, today I don't think so, but I don't think he is. Let's say by the trade deadline, I would say there's a 10% chance he still plays for Sacramento, and I think he's gone this offseason. Where he goes, I've got no idea, but I would say they are pretty keen to get rid of him and his alleged negative attitude in that locker room.
Alleged negative attitude. He said it's a whole lot of money. For the Mavericks fans that I know are in this right now, Mark J. Spears just said on ESPN that Dragic wants to be in Dallas, and there's been a couple other reports that Dragic would prefer going to Dallas. It would make it complicated. It would be complicated to make something like that happen, but I think a trade with Toronto could happen. They would have to do some kind of move like that. It would not make a lot of sense for them to buy out Dragic and just lose him for nothing and still have to pay that deal. So a trade would make sense there, and the Mavericks can still make that happen. But things are still happening and moving. There's still some players out there. There's guys available. We mentioned Spencer Dinwiddie. Dragic could still be available. There's guys like Nick Batum. There's other guys available for teams like the Mavericks with money.
Yeah, and just before we got the new Lowry is 3 years, $90 million,
which is what we expected, right?
I mean, it was around that $90 to $100 million range, and that's what we ended up at. So I think that's totally fine. It is only 3 years. It will take him to 38 as well, but I think that's a pretty fair number.
Last thing here, you wanted to get mad at a deal today. You wanted to just be like, "What are you doing?" Was there a deal that rose to that level for you today that you're like, "Okay, this is the deal that Josh Lloyd doesn't understand the most"?
I think it's probably Jarrett Allen. I know he's good, but is anyone going to, you can say, "Oh, we'll sign it and trade it later," but is anyone trading for that sort of contract of Jarrett Allen? Maybe it's the max extension for Jimmy Butler, but I understand the reasons behind that. It's probably the Jarrett Allen one to me. I don't fully understand the Kelly Olynyk deal either for Detroit, but it's probably the Jarrett Allen one. Anything for you?
Well, just to go back to that Jarrett Allen one, we have seen guys. I mean, we saw Drummond get traded, and so if Jarrett Allen reaches the point of Drummond, then it's still possible to be traded. Like all these guys can be traded. It's just if they're going to be able to be traded to a place that,
What did Drummond get traded for? Like
nothing.
A pack of peanuts and like a sponsorship on one episode of a podcast,
and an NFT at some point, right? Like a deal to do NFTs. The Jarrett Allen one sticks out to me. That Jimmy Butler deal, I think, is going to come back to bite the Heat at some point. That one just really stands out to me as an albatross deal that could be bad towards the end of it. But for now, it's good to just keep that guy in house. And he, like David Ramil said, he represents Heat culture right now. He is the guy that's the flag standard bearer for that. And so if you have that, then it's worth paying. They're going to lose Udonis Haslem, and that was the guy that was carrying it before. So instead of paying Udonis Haslem the minimum, you might as well pay Jimmy Butler, $45, $50 million at the end of his deal.
Absolutely.
All right. Anything else? Any other questions in the chat we're hearing as we now hit this 2-hour mark on this stream? There's nothing else I'm seeing on Twitter. There you go.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll get some other little deals float in after over the next couple of hours, but not a lot happening. Not a lot happening here at the moment.
But we have a podcast for every single NBA team. If you're watching this, Locked On Mavericks for me, Locked On Fantasy Basketball for Josh Lloyd. There's so much stuff that you can get into with the Locked On Network. There's 5 days a week. We are daily going with each and every one of these teams. Our local experts are covering all of these stories. So if you want to hear more about the Jimmy Butler deal, go listen to Locked On Heat. If you want to hear more about the Jared Allen deal, go listen to Locked On Cavs. There's really good stuff. A lot of our shows are on YouTube now, so go subscribe to those channels, including mine and Josh Lloyd's, Josh Lloyd Fantasy Basketball. Guys, we appreciate you joining us for this Locked On NBA free agency stream. More stuff will be coming. Follow all of us. And yeah, we'll check you guys out on the podcast later. Eat a Built Bar for us.
Yeah, get your Built Bars.